Chapter 2. Lock the palace doors. From today onwards, you're not allowed to send food or water. After throwing down these words, Yi Hongyi left decisively. Seeing Yi Hongyi's figure fade from her line of sight, Yarrow Sulwan's lips curved into a dark smile. Then she walked into the cold palace. TSK, I really didn't expect His Majesty to be so sentimental and not personally get rid of you. Yarrow Sulwan raised her brows as she looked towards Yarrow Morshin, who was wailing on the ground. Her soft voice was filled with unconcealable malice. Yarrow Morshin didn't care about Yarrow Sulwan's mockery. She hugged her Zhonga tightly and wailed her heart out. I'm sorry, Zhonga. If it wasn't for Mother, how could you have died so miserably? How cruel this world is. Just where did she go wrong? If it wasn't her fault, why did she have to endure all of this? Cry along with that lowly mother and retarded younger sister of yours. Looking at the time, they should have been waiting for Zhonga down there a long time ago. Yarrow Sulwan couldn't help but laugh. She finally got rid of the thorn in her side. This was truly satisfying. What did you say? Yarrow Morshin abruptly raised her eyes and glared at Yarrow Sulwan in despair. I didn't say it clearly enough. Fine, I'll say it again. Just yesterday, when you were banished to the cold palace by His Majesty, my mother already acted according to plan and gave that lowly mother of yours a dose of strong medicine. Also, that retarded younger sister of yours, I reckon that by this time, she has already been defiled by the great masters in the brothel. Yarrow Sulwan's words were like a death knell ringing in Yarrow Morshin's head. Yarrow Sulwan, I've treated you well, yet you actually repay kindness with enmity. You're so heartless. Fine. Yarrow Sulwan slapped her, interrupting Yarrow Morshin's roar. Pa, if you've treated me well, then you should obediently give up the throne of Empress. That position is mine. With your lowly life of a concubine, do you think you're fit to sit on the Phoenix throne? Yarrow Morshin, I've been itching for you to die for a long time. Luckily the heavens have eyes. Although it's a bit late, they still let me get rid of you. Oh, I almost forgot to tell you, those rumors were spread by me. Lord Hellion was wrongly imprisoned by me. Otherwise, how could you have secretly instigated all the officials to sign a petition to protect him? Also, that night at the Rippling Waves Pavilion, I was also the one who found the so-called eyewitness. Also, there really are too many, this consort can't even count them all. Yarrow Sulwan arrogantly flaunted her contributions as she smiled sinisterly. What a vicious heart. I'll kill you. Yarrow Morshin felt her heart, which was already riddled with thousands of holes, shatter with a bang. She had risked her life to love Yi Hongyi, who saw her as a thorn in his side, to indulge Yarrow Sulwan, who saw her as a thorn in his side, but all she got in return was the miserable deaths of her loved one. Just as Yarrow Morshin was about to pounce on Yarrow Sulwan threw her to the ground. Forget it. You gave me a chance to harm you after all. This dagger is my way of repaying you. The smell of blood here is really disgusting. Decide how you want to die. Yarrow Sulwan abruptly flung the dagger in her sleeve in front of Yarrow Morshin. Then she covered her nose and swept a look of disgust at Yarrow Morshin's deathly pale face before leaving. The iron chains clanked and the doors of the cold palace closed once more. Yarrow Morshin's hands dug into the ground, ignoring the piercing pain in her fingers as she silently crawled towards the blood-covered infant. Zhonga, don't be afraid. Mother will go and accompany you right now. Mother swears that I won't let anyone bully you again. Tears of blood flowed out of the corners of Yarrow Morshin's eyes. She held the infant tightly with one hand and slowly picked up the dagger with the other. Her eyes were pitch black. Yi Hongyi, Yarrow Sulwan, after I die, I will definitely turn into a malicious spirit and demand payment from you all for this evil debt. Blood gushed out and dyed the ice-cold stone red. That dark red blood was like a flower that bloomed in hell, poignant yet sinister. Yarrow Morshin and the infant's corpse tightly hugged each other. In this life, no one would be able to separate them again. In Great Chu Imperial City, Flourishing Street was the most prosperous. The streets were filled with people and carriages. On both sides of the street, tea houses, taverns, pawnshops, and workshops were lined up. It was a scene of prosperity. On the entire street, In terms of style and extravagance, none dared to compare to Joyous Fragrance Courtyard. The 3-story building rose steeply from the ground. It had a glazed tile roof, blood-colored goose flying over the eaves, and carved beams and painted pillars. This was a place where men lived extravagantly and indulged in a life of luxury. Large amounts of silver forged Joyous Fragrance Courtyard's splendor. At the entrance, several enchanting women with heavy makeup were half-naked. They continuously waved the silk handkerchiefs in their hands, their bewitching eyes making the legs of many men go numb. Inside Joyous Fragrance Courtyard, the scenery was charming and gentle. The men hugged the red and the jade, leading a befuddled life. This Joyous Fragrance Courtyard that seemed to be dazzling in gold and jade was really a shabby place on the inside. At this moment, the innermost room of Joyous Fragrance Courtyard was a mess. Woo! You guys bully me. Liu Xing, save me. It hurts. On the bed, Yarrow Moen's eyes welled up with tears. She desperately waved her snow-colored arms, trying to push the man on top of her off. However, in the next second, her hands were fiercely pressed on top of her head by another man. You beasts. Let go of third miss. Scram. The man called Liu Xing's eyes were scarlet red. He lifted his leg and kicked the thug who was pulling him down. He turned around and rushed to the bed with a large stride. He reached out and pulled the hedonistic young master on top of Yarrow Moen to the ground. Then he punched the eyes of another vulgar man. Third miss, don't be afraid. With Liu Xing here, I won't let anyone bully you. Liu Xing used his sleeve to wipe away the blood under his nose. Ignoring the numerous injuries on his body, he stood in front of Yarrow Moen like a statue. Preposterous. Beat him to death for this young master. The hedonistic young master crawled up in a sorry state and pointed at Liu Xing as he spoke furiously. When the thugs heard this, they immediately surrounded Liu Xing and swung their fists with all their might. Don't hit him. Liu Xing. Woo. Yarrow Moen watched in horror as Liu Xing was pushed to the ground by those thugs and was continuously punched and kicked. Thus, she disregarded everything and rushed off the bed, trying to pull those thugs away. However, she didn't expect that she would be ruthlessly kicked out by one of the thugs. Her body was like a butterfly with broken wings as she fiercely crashed into the corner of the bed. Her hands, powerlessly drooped, and in the end, she stopped breathing. Everyone only cared about dealing with Liu Xing. Even the hedonistic young master joined in on the violent beating. No one paid attention to Yarrow Moen's condition. I'll fight you all to the death. When Liu Xing, who was beaten black and blue all over, saw Yarrow Moen fall to the ground, he became anxious and suddenly stood up like a madman. He casually picked up the stool next to him and fiercely threw it at one of the thugs. The thug was caught off guard and was hit by the stool, causing blood to spurt out. What big dog guts! You actually dare to injure this young master's people. Beat him to death. The hedonistic young master roared fiercely. The thugs and Liu Xing once again became entangled. So noisy. In a daze, Yarrow Moen felt a stabbing pain on her forehead. Her eyes slowly opened. Seeing the scene in front of her, Yarrow Moen felt indescribable. She suddenly thought of something and her hands fiercely clenched. When she lowered her eyes, she couldn't see her own Zhonga. Third miss. Quickly run. Quickly run. Liu Xing's head was bleeding. He knew that he couldn't hold on for much longer, so he shouted with all his might, hoping that Yarrow Moen could hear him. Yarrow Moen looked over in shock and saw a familiar figure. It was Liu Xing. She remembered very clearly that in the entire Yarrow Xiongfu, this servant was the only person that her younger sister was close to. But just now. What did you call me? Yarrow Moen looked towards Liu Xing in shock. In the next second, she abruptly stood up and ran to the dressing table, grabbing the bronze mirror. Moen. How could this be? How could this be? Yarrow Moen fiercely grabbed the bronze mirror and looked at it with all her might. But no matter which angle she looked at it from, the mirror was shockingly her own younger sister, Yarrow Moen's face. Wasn't she already dead? She still clearly remembered the sudden coldness when the dagger pierced her chest. The moment she closed her eyes, Zhonga's blood-covered face was the last scene of her life. But now, she actually had consciousness. Not only that, This body clearly belonged to her own younger sister. Who could tell her what exactly had happened? Little wife, don't think about running. This young master spent a lot of money. Why aren't you guys quickly taking care of this brat? What a disappointment. The hedonistic young master suddenly grabbed Yarrow Mowen's hand, his sinister face filled with a lewd smile. Third miss. Smash him. Use the mirror to smash him. Quickly run. The thugs received the young master's order and became even more ruthless. Blood gushed out of Liu Xing's forehead. At this moment, Yarrow Morshin had no choice but to accept this reality. She had come back to life. Moreover, she had reincarnated in someone else's body. Feeling the pain on her forehead, Yarrow Morshin firmly believed that her younger sister had definitely died in the underworld when she hit the corner of the bed. Good. Since the heavens had given her a chance to be reborn, she would naturally properly cherish it. From now on, she was Yarrow Mowen, the Yarrow Mowen who understood Yi Hongyi's cruel heart and unscrupulous lungs the most, the Yarrow Mowen who had the heart of a snake and scorpion, the Yarrow Mowen who bore the blood feud between Yarrow Morshin and Zhong'er, the Yarrow Mowen who swore to dismember Yi Hongyi and Yarrow Sulwan into 10,000 pieces. Stop! Yarrow Mowen shouted sternly with a clanging sound. That voice was so cold that it made the hedonistic young master tremble and loosen his fingers. Third miss. Hurry and run. Liu Xing's vision was blurry, his face was covered in blood, but he was still concerned about Yarrow Mowen's safety. TSK, how did you suddenly become powerful? It's good that you're a bit more powerful. This young master likes little chili peppers. The hedonistic young master was only slightly startled, then he once again pounced forward with a lewd smile. However, when he met Yarrow Mowen's cold and bloodthirsty gaze, he abruptly stopped his steps. I am the current Empress' younger sister, the current Prime Minister's 3,000 gold. You guys must have eaten the guts of a leopard, to actually dare disrespect me. The cold voice was like that of an Azura from hell. Yarrow Mowen's cherry lips were tightly pursed as she approached the hedonistic young master step by step. Don't tell me you guys don't know? The waste tablet that Liu Xing dropped on the floor had such a large Yarrow character written on it. Are you guys blind? He kept on calling me third miss. Are you all deaf? In the entire imperial city, if one isn't an important person in the court, how could a servant have a waste tablet? It can't be that you guys don't even know this bit of common sense, right? Yarrow Mowen's words were resounding as she coldly stared at the hedonistic young master. Also don't try to kill him to silence him, not to mention that this room's door is wide open. How many passers-by have seen this miss's appearance? Do you guys dare to guarantee that when Liu Xing woke up, you didn't inform the other servants? Listen, cure Liu Xing, otherwise you, along with these wastes, and your family will all be buried along with him. Now, get out of the way. Yarrow Mowen's beautiful eyes abruptly turned cold, the light in them was like a death by 1,000 cuts, forcing the hedonistic young master to not dare to resist in the slightest. In the next second, Yarrow Mowen ran out of Happy Spring Courtyard like a madman, Yarrow Sulwan's words from the cold palace incessantly ringing in her ears. My mother has already delivered a strong dose of medicine to that lowly mother of yours according to the plan, and that retarded sister of yours, I reckon by now, she's probably already been ravaged by the masters of Yixiong Courtyard. Chapter 3. Third miss, is there a dog chasing you? How can he run so fast? At the entrance of the estate, Yarrow II, who had been the steward of the Yarrow estate for 20 years, looked towards Yarrow Mowen suspiciously. Although his tone was less respectful, it was more amiable. Yarrow Mowen acted as if she hadn't heard Yarrow II's attempt to strike up a conversation with her. She only stood at the entrance of the residence to catch her breath for a moment before madly rushing towards her mother, Mo Li's Shu Jingxian. When he saw Yarrow Mowen run into the residence as if she had lost her life, Yarrow II subconsciously walked out of the residence. He looked around but didn't see anything out of the ordinary. He couldn't help but hang his head and sigh. With third miss's appearance, if it wasn't for her intelligence, she would definitely be bestowed the title of consort like eldest miss and second miss. After passing through the courtyard and around the 9 winding corridors, Yarrow Mo Wn passed through the arched doors of Shujing Pavilion with the speed of a gust of wind. Suddenly, she heard an ear-piercing clamor coming from inside. Master, you're crazy. What did I do wrong? Are you going to punish me like this? On the jade-colored marble floor, a charming woman covered her red and swollen cheek with one hand, staring at the middle-aged man in front of her with a look of disbelief. The man wore a brownish-purple robe with wide sleeves. He had a well-proportioned figure and a scholarly appearance. His brows had the demeanor of a scholar. His deep eyes were calm and reserved, and the sharp light in them revealed an unconcealable shrewdness and foresight. This person was precisely Great Chu's Prime Minister, Yarrow Enchanting, and the beautiful woman whose golden hairpin he had knocked off was his legal wife, Yarrow Sulwan's birth mother, Do Xianglan. At this moment, Yarrow Enchanting flew into a thunderous rage, his eyes glaring at Do Xianglan. His finger fiercely pointed at Mo Li, who was no longer breathing on the bed, and growled in a low voice. "You evil woman! No matter how you bully Mo Li or how you put slow-acting poison in her food to weaken her body, this old man can tolerate all of that. But you poisoned her to death. As the legal wife, you are narrow-minded and vicious. This old man can no longer tolerate you." Yarrow Enchanting coldly sneered, his ice-cold eyes without a trace of warmth. "Master is right, it was I who poisoned her to death. Ever since the day Master was drunk and pampered her, there has been a thorn in my heart. It was this concubine who was benevolent and forgave her for giving birth to that lowly Yarrow Morshin, yet, she forcefully snatched away Sulwan's position as Empress. If it wasn't for this concubine giving her a slow-acting poison when she was pregnant with Yarrow Mo Wan, that Yarrow Mo Wan would definitely be as foxy as her older sister. Although Yarrow Mo Wan was lucky and didn't die in the womb, it's still good that she was born an idiot." Do Xianglan glared at Mo Li, who was on the bed with a sinister expression as she let out a low roar. Slap. Just when Do Xianglan was wantonly cursing, Yarrow Enchanting's slap swept over once again. "Since you've already admitted it, then this old man will place righteousness before family, and I'll personally send you to the Ministry of Justice." Yarrow Enchanting spoke ruthlessly, and he was just about to step forward and drag Do Xianglan up when he was stopped by her. "Master, it's better to read this secret report first, then it won't be too late to make a move." Do Xianglan fiercely shook off Yarrow Enchanting's hand, and threw the paper in her sleeve over. Yarrow Enchanting hesitated for a moment, then bent down to pick up the letter. As he looked at the letter in his hand, Yarrow Enchanting's face turned green and purple, changing extremely quickly as if he was flipping through a book. In the end, Yarrow Enchanting frowned slightly and put the letter into his sleeve. After a trace of hesitation flashed through his eyes, he slowly walked towards Do Xianglan, gave a low laugh, and reached out to help Do Xianglan up. "Madam has been wronged. I didn't think that Mo Xin, that animal, would actually do such a shameless thing. It's still Madam who has thought things through thoroughly. It's good that this slut is dead. In a bit, this old man will have the steward throw her corpse into the mass grave to avoid angering Madam. Just now, this old man was too heavy-handed. Does Madam still feel pain?" Yarrow Enchanting's finger drew across the corner of Do Xianglan's lips, helping her wipe away the bloodstain, and said with a seemingly pained expression, "It's good that Master knows his wrongs. Yarrow Mo Xin is already dead, so the position of Empress will definitely be in the bag of my daughter Sulwan. In the future, the honor and disgrace of the Yarrow residents will all depend on Sulwan." Do Xianglan cast a sidelong glance at Yarrow Enchanting and intentionally reminded him. Yes. Madam is tired, this old man will help you back to rest." Yarrow Enchanting attentively supported Do Xianglan out of the room. Out of the corner of his eyes, he subconsciously glanced at Mo Li and a trace of sorrow appeared in the depths of his eyes. The moment Yarrow Enchanting supported Do Xianglan out of the room, Yarrow Mo Wan suddenly flashed and hid behind an elm tree in the corner of the courtyard. Only when the two of them disappeared from Shu Jingxian did Yarrow Mo Wan run out and rush into the room. "Mother! Daughter came late. Mother!" Yarrow Mo Wan fiercely threw herself at the bed, large drops of tears rolling down her face. Her knees went soft and she knelt on the ground. Her hands tightly grasped Mo Li's long ice-cold fingers as she wailed in grief. After crying for an unknown amount of time, Yarrow Mo Wan slowly raised her eyes. Her ice-cold and gloomy eyes were rolling with an intense darkness. "Mother! Don't worry and go. Daughter will definitely get justice for you. I will make Do Xianglan suffer 100-fold for the pain she inflicted on you." And that Yarrow Junting who isn't fit to be a husband, isn't fit to be a father. Daughter swears to you that they will die very miserably. A burst of ice-cold laughter suddenly rang out, reverberating in the air above Shu Jingxian. It was as sinister and frightening as a ghost. The current Yarrow Mo Wn was like the king of hell, her entire body emitting a bone-piercing chill. Right at this time, the sound of hurried footsteps suddenly came from outside the door. Yarrow Mo Wan's shapely brows furrowed and she hid under the bed without hesitation. Before she thought of a good countermeasure, she couldn't easily show herself. Otherwise, it would only alert the enemy. Spread out the straw mat. Yarrow too said in a low voice, his gaze sharp as he looked at the two servants behind him. The servants obeyed and spread the straw mat under their armpits on the ground. Steward Yarrow, are we really going to throw second madam into the mass grave? Asked the servant Chen Chong doubtfully. Here's 50 taels of silver. You two listen, carry second madam out from the back door, buy a good coffin, and bury her properly. Yarrow too instructed in a low voice and casually took out a heavy bag of money from his bosom. But master. Chen Chong reluctantly took the money and said with a frown. Would master watch you guys do anything? Second madam treated us quite well when she was alive, so this is all we can do. Remember, bury her well, instructed Yarrow too. What's written on the tombstone? Asked Chen Chong suspiciously. Tombstone. Ari. Let's just erect a tombstone first, so as to avoid unnecessary complications. Yarrow too let out a long sigh. When he looked towards Mo Li on the bed, he couldn't help but sigh. Eldest Miss is the current empress, how could master dare to treat second madam like this? Chen Qiong and another servant lifted Mo Li from the bed and complained. Just do your job, there's no need to talk so much. Yarrow too warned solemnly. However, he had already guessed that something must have happened to eldest miss in the palace. Otherwise, even if master wanted to put on an act, he would still give second madam a grand burial. When Chen Qiong and the other servant carried Mo Li's corpse out of Shu Jingxian, Yarrow too was about to follow them out, but he suddenly froze. Then he ordered Chen Qiong to leave first and closed the door behind him. Third miss. Once Chen Qiong and the others walked far away, Yarrow too turned to look under the bed and called out in a low voice. Under the bed, Yarrow Mo Wn knew that she had accidentally made a sound earlier, so there was no point in hiding it anymore. Thus, she choked with sobs as she crawled out from under the bed. Steward Yarrow. Woo-woo. Mo Wn is so scared. Mother doesn't want Mo Wn anymore. Yarrow Mo Wn pretended to be frightened as she huddled at the corner of the bed. She wiped her tears with both hands and looked completely panicked. Third miss, don't cry. Second madam has gone to a very far place. Do you want to go find her? Yarrow too crouched down next to Yarrow Mo Wn, his eyes filled with sorrow. Yes. Mo Wan doesn't want to be separated from mother. Yarrow Mo Wn nodded fiercely and looked towards Yarrow too with tears in her eyes. However, a trace of vigilance rose in her heart. Third miss, listen well. Ting Yu is currently waiting for you in the firewood room. There's a key and a dozen or so banknotes here. Go find her and she'll take you to second madam. Remember, you mustn't let anyone find you. Otherwise, they'll capture you and won't let you go find mother. Yarrow too thought for a moment before stuffing the key to the firewood room and the dozen or so banknotes into Yarrow Mo Wan's hands. Yarrow too knew that if third miss still stayed in the Fu, first madam definitely wouldn't let her off. His words carried little weight, so he had done everything he could. Yarrow Mo Wn felt relieved as she looked at the key and banknotes in her hands. Then she looked towards Yarrow too. Thank you. Yarrow Mo Wan promised inwardly. You'll be rewarded for your kindness. Third miss, hurry and go. If you're any later, Ting Yu will get anxious. Yarrow too couldn't help but wipe his tears when he saw the glistening tears in Yarrow Mo Wan's eyes. He had watched third miss grow up, so he couldn't bear to part with her. Then Mo Wan will be leaving. Yarrow Mo Wn knew that she couldn't tarry, so she got up and left Shu Jingxian. On the way, Yarrow Mo Wan intentionally avoided the servants and quickly arrived at the firewood room in the rear courtyard. Seeing that there was no one around, Yarrow Mo Wan hurriedly opened the door. Tingyu was the little maid that her mother had saved from the streets. She had been serving her mother ever since. Perhaps it was because she had saved her mother's life that Tingyu was extremely loyal and devoted to her mother. This was also the reason why Yarrow too had her come to look for her. The moment she opened the door, Yarrow Mo Wan's pupils constricted and she suddenly froze. She saw that Tingyu was hanging from the beam of the room, her hair a mess, her lips stained with blood, and her entire body was covered in cuts and bruises. Tingyu! Tingyu! Yarrow Mo Wn only froze for a moment before she hastily closed the door. Then she moved a stool over and stepped on it, saving Tingyu. Third miss. Third miss. You're all right? That's great. You're all right. When Tingyu opened her eyes, she saw Yarrow Mo Wan and immediately cried tears of joy. Who beat you up like this? Yarrow Mo Wan's eyes were filled with tears as she reached out to tuck Tingyu's messy hair behind her ears. It's Third miss. Why are you here? Hurry and leave. Leave from the back door. It would be terrible if Gao Momo found out. Hurry and leave. Hey. Tingyu seemed to have thought of something and pushed Yarrow Mo Wan away with all her might. However, because it affected her wounds, she couldn't help but cry out in pain. I'll bring you away. Yarrow Mo Wan forced back her tears and casually helped Tingyu out of the firewood room. Fortunately, the back door was a few meters away from the firewood room, so Yarrow Mo Wan and Tingyu left Yarrow Seong Fu without any obstructions. Third miss. You. As if sensing that Yarrow Mo Wan wasn't the same as usual, Tingyu opened her mouth in doubt. Chapter 4. Third miss. How could you? How could I be so clear-headed, right? Luckily, after the trip to Yiseong Courtyard, my head got better. However, it's all thanks to Liu Xing that I can keep my innocence. Tingyu, who beat you up like this? Why are you afraid that Gao Momo will see me? If I remember correctly, Gao Momo is Ben was chosen by elder sister from the palace to serve mother. Yarrow Mo Wan's expression was grave as she questioned. Better? As long as you're better. Woo-woo, as long as you're better. Miss, you can't go back to Yarrow Seong Fu. There was news from the palace that something had happened to eldest miss. She was afraid that she had already. Gao Momo was chosen by eldest miss, but she was the confidant of second miss. All these years, Gao Momo had been following eldest madam's orders and poisoned second madam's medicinal soup. Last night, this servant accidentally saw Gao Momo spilling a lot of black powder into second madam's bowl, so she tied me up and locked me in the woodshed. She also said that she had already sent miss to a brothel. This servant got angry and bumped into her, so she hung me up. Miss, let's leave the imperial city. If eldest madam sees you, she definitely won't let you off. Tingyu sobbed as she recounted. Gao Momo. I can't leave. I've been a fool for more than 10 years and I haven't done anything for mother. Now that mother has died, as a daughter, if I can't take revenge for her, then I'm a daughter in vain. There's 100 taels banknote here. Mo Wn thanks you for taking care of mother all these years. You can leave. Yarrow Mo Wan placed the banknote in Tingyu's hand and said solemnly. Looking at the banknote in her hand, Tingyu was startled for a moment before she returned it to Yarrow Mo Wan. If miss doesn't leave, you also won't leave. Second madam has saved you's life. Now that second madam has died, you will naturally take revenge for her. You will follow miss in the future. If we live, we live. If we die, we die. Tingyu spoke with grief and indignation. I promise you that we won't die. Yarrow Mo Wan pulled Tingyu's hand. Her clear voice carried an unquestionable firmness. Miss, then what do we do now? Go back and expose the evil deeds of First Madam and Gao Momo to master? Tingyu raised her small face and said innocently. You remember this. In this world, we cannot rely on anyone to stand up for us. If you want to take revenge, you can only rely on yourself. Yarrow Mo Wan's beautiful eyes trembled slightly as she pulled Tingyu over. Let me ask you, how is the relationship between First Madam and father all these years? The first step to revenge was to establish a foothold in Prime Minister Yarrow's residence. If she didn't have Prime Minister Yarrow's residence to rely on, how could she enter the imperial palace? And with her current identity, if she wanted to return to Prime Minister Yarrow's residence, she must first obtain the protection of Yarrow Enchanting. I'm not sure about this, but I do know one thing. That is, the First Madam is raising an opera singer outside. He seems to be the leader of the Yunda opera troupe, called Liu Yusin. First Madam often took advantage of Master's absence to go to Yunda building to meet Liu Yusin in private. This matter is known by many people in the Fu. It is absolutely true. Ting Yu said with certainty. Liu Yusin. Yarrow Moan's peach lips moved as a bright light flashed through her eyes. I can't show myself right now. Help me do two things. First, secretly return to Prime Minister Yarrow's residence and find Liu Xing to see me. Second. Yarrow Moan leaned over to Ting Yu's side and muttered softly. Then she handed all of the banknotes Yarrow Tu had given her to Ting Yu. The next morning, Yarrow Tu walked out of the residence according to his usual habit. He looked towards the main road on the east side. When he didn't see Yarrow Enchanting's sedan chair, he turned around and gave orders to the guards and servants on both sides. I heard that recently, some homeless mobs have come to the Imperial City. From time to time, they would come out to steal things. Open your eyes wide and look carefully. Don't startle Master. Just as Yarrow Tu was about to speak, a man dressed in opera suddenly ran over from around the corner. You must be Steward Yarrow. Not good. Something has happened to Madame Yarrow. The man was sweating profusely. His hands were on his knees as he gasped for breath. Who are you? Yarrow Tu's gaze darkened slightly as he looked towards the man cautiously. Replying Steward Yarrow, this lowly one is an opera singer. Madame Yarrow's wealth has been exposed and she's been surrounded by those mobs. Right now, Yunda opera troupe is in a mess and the troupe leader can't control it. He urgently sent me to the residence to inform you to hurry and rescue her. Those mobs only recognize silver, they don't recognize Madam of Prime Minister Fu, urged the man anxiously. When Yarrow Tu heard this, he was just about to ask about it when he heard a voice coming from behind him. What happened? Yarrow Enchanting coldly asked as he lifted the curtain of the sedan chair that was being carried by 4 people. Replying Master, this actor said that Madam met with an accident when she was listening to an opera at Yunda Opera Troupe. This old servant will immediately send people to rescue Madam, reported Yarrow Tu truthfully. Call a few more people. This old man wants to personally see just which blind mobs dare to steal from this old man. Yarrow Enchanting coldly sneered as he lifted the curtain of the sedan chair. The sedan chair bearers naturally understood his meaning and all headed towards Yunda Opera Troupe. Although Yarrow Tu was suspicious, he didn't have time to think about it. He hastily called over a dozen or so guards to follow. Inside the sedan chair, Yarrow Enchanting stroked the dark green jade thumb ring with one hand. His gaze was cold. Today's morning court session, he had already confirmed that the news that Su Luan had sent out from the palace yesterday was true. Currently, the Wang, Xie, Heng, and Huan families were eyeing the imperial concubines covetously. These 4 families occupied all the positions of imperial concubines in the imperial harem. Originally, with his own daughters, one was the noble empress and the other a guifei, he had nothing to fear. But now, it seemed that the prosperity or decline of the Yarrow residence depended entirely on Yarrow Su Luan. If that wasn't the case, he wouldn't have had to make this trip and deliberately curry favor with Do Xianglan. Inside the Ala Liu Xing walked in with the man in the opera costume. Is everything done? Ting Yu looked towards Liu Xing suspiciously. When she saw Liu Xing nod, she handed over the remaining banknotes in her hand to the man. Don't worry, this lowly one has already poured the entire bottle of aphrodisiac into the wine. Right now, I reckon that Liu Yusin and Lady Yarrow are currently making love to each other and forgetting about me. Normally, when Lady Yarrow and Liu Yusin meet privately, everyone in Yunda Opera Troupe would retreat and find an excuse to go out for a stroll. So right now, there are only the 2 of them in Yunda Restaurant. Also, this lowly one has already unlocked Yunda Restaurant. Also, the man still wanted to say more but was interrupted by Ting Yu. Take this and leave the imperial city. You should know what will happen if the Prime Minister finds you, reminded Ting Yu with good intentions. I know. This lowly one will leave right now. I won't waste even a quarter of an hour. The man took the banknotes and walked out of the alley. As soon as the man left, Tingyu and Liu Xing hurriedly returned to the inn. Tingyu, even now, I still feel like I'm dreaming. Has Third Miss really become smarter? Liu Xing's gaze swept across the crowd as he spoke in a low voice. His eyes were filled with unconcealable excitement. If Third Miss hadn't designed this play, I also wouldn't believe that First Madam would be out of luck this time. How satisfying. As Tingyu and Liu Xing spoke, they took a small path and headed straight for Yunda Restaurant. Yunda Restaurant was located on the east side of Xinghua Street. It basically didn't open during the day and only opened at night. When Yarrow too arrived at Yunda Restaurant, he felt that something was amiss. However, the master had already arrived and Do Xianglan's domineering temper had made him suffer quite a bit. At this time, there was no need for him to meddle in other people's business. Master, we've arrived at Yunda Restaurant. When the sedan chair landed, Yarrow too went forward to lift the curtain. Yarrow Junting raised his head to look at the two-story building on his left. His brows furrowed slightly and after a moment of hesitation, he still walked down from the sedan chair. Didn't they say that there was a mob causing trouble? Yarrow Junting walked over the sedan chair to the front of Yunda Restaurant and asked suspiciously. At his side, Yarrow too subconsciously pushed the door of Yunda Restaurant, but heard a creak. The door wasn't locked. Yarrow Junting walked in without thinking. Yarrow too was about to order the guards to follow, but he was stopped by Yarrow Junting in the next second. They stay outside, you come in with this old man. The moment Yarrow Junting entered the door, he could faintly hear Do Xianglan's wanton laughter. He stopped the guards and only called Yarrow too walking into Yunda Restaurant. It was a spacious building. Other than some tables and benches, there was a stage in the middle. The decorations could be considered gorgeous. Yushin. Did you miss me? Yarrow too had just entered when he heard Do Xianglan's coquettish voice coming from the second floor. Master. Yarrow too looked towards Yarrow Junting for instructions. You stay here. Don't let anyone in. Yarrow Junting said in a low voice. Although his expression was calm, his eyes were surging with monstrous waves. Yarrow too didn't say anything and silently stood guard at the door. At this time, Yarrow Junting was already walking up the stairs with violent steps. The obscene sounds became clearer and clearer. Of course I do, even in my dreams I can't forget you, Xianglan. Unfortunately, Yusin is only an entertainer, not worthy of your identity, or else, Yusin will definitely bring you far away and fly far away, no longer sneaking around. After drinking for 30 minutes, inside the private room, Lu Yusin could only feel the blood in her entire body boiling, pulling Do Xianglan into her embrace, her palms impatiently rubbing Do Xianglan's voluptuous bosom, her mouth saying words that went against her heart. You little sweetheart, your words are always pleasing to the eye. Yushin, kiss me. Do Xianglan felt her heart itch unbearably, her fiery body twisting in Lu Yusin's arms from time to time. Yushin's words can illuminate the sun and moon. Lu Yusin looked like a girl with a pink face and peach lips. He could be considered a handsome man. At this moment, Lu Yusin was unscrupulously pulling off Do Xianglan's outer clothes, her lips fiercely kissing Do Xianglan's snow-white jade neck. Because of the aphrodisiac, the two of them didn't have much prelude and directly entered the main topic. Ah! Yushin, hurry up, oh! Do Xianglan was mesmerized by Lu Yusin's teasing. Her hair was disheveled and scattered, her hands roaming around Lu Yusin's powerful and sexy body, extremely joyful. Do Xianglan's voice and the aphrodisiac in her body made Lu Yusin feel as if she had been injected with chicken blood. She fiercely grabbed Do Xianglan's jade leg and sprinted forward with all her might. Through the gap in the private room, Yarrow Junting saw the charming scene in front of him. His deep eyes flashed with a bloodthirsty scarlet red, the veins on his forehead bulged, both of his hands clenched into fists inside his sleeves. The jadeite ring's finger was aching, but Yarrow Junting remained unmoved. At this moment, he really wanted to rush in and take the life of this adulterous couple, but he endured. Yarrow Junting's thin lips tightly pursed, his body gradually trembling because of his anger. With a catcher sound, the sound of the ring breaking and falling to the ground did not affect the two passionate figures in the private room in the slightest. Suddenly, Yarrow Enchanting turned around and retreated from the private room step by step, his footsteps abnormally heavy. Master! Seeing Yarrow Enchanting's deathly pale face, Yarrow too worriedly stepped forward. Chapter 5. Why did Master leave? Is eldest Madam not inside? Impossible. I personally saw eldest Madam and Lu Yusin kissing in the private room on the second floor. I can't let Master leave like this. Otherwise, third Miss's efforts will be wasted. I'll go stop the palanquin, Liu Xing said anxiously. No. Third Miss only told us to watch carefully and didn't let us do anything else. Let's go back first. Ting Yu pulled Liu Xing and said firmly. Inside the inn, when Ting Yu and Liu Xing walked in with drooping heads, Yarrow Mo Wn was leisurely sitting at the table. Her jade fingers lifted the lid of the teacup and lightly knocked it a few times before taking a sip. You're back. How did things go? Yarrow Mo Wn put down the teacup and looked towards Ting Yu with her long eyelashes slightly raised. Young miss, we're sorry, we messed things up. We don't know why, but after Master entered Virtue Cloud Restaurant, he just silently came out. There was no movement at all. Ting Yu looked towards Yarrow Moen apologetically. Otherwise, what movement did you think there would be? Yarrow Mo Wan's cherry lips slightly hooked as she raised her eyebrows towards Ting Yu. Her eyes were full of smiles. Sure enough, it was in line with her father's style of doing things. Catching the adulterer in bed, naturally it was to drown eldest Madam in a pig cage. Ting Yu said as a matter of fact. Remember, no matter how powerful a person is, there will be times when they have to swallow their broken teeth. Yarrow Mo Wan explained gently. Then didn't we work for nothing? Liu Xing looked towards Yarrow Mo Wan in confusion. In this world, no matter how high or low their status is, what they can't tolerate the most is their own woman lying in the arms of another man, no matter if he loves this woman or not. Moreover, father saw it with his own eyes. Father hid it well, but that doesn't mean he doesn't care. Perhaps he's vomiting blood from anger right now. Ting Yu, does father have the habit of drinking lotus seed soup after dinner? Yarrow Mo Wn restrained the coldness in her eyes and suddenly changed the topic. Yes, this habit has been for many years. In the past, Madam personally did it. Ever since Madam's body became weak, this matter has always been handled by Gao Momo. Ting Yu said truthfully. Is that so? Yarrow Mo Wan's beautiful eyes slightly drooped as if she was deep in thought. Miss, you had me give all the money to that opera singer. Then how are we going to pay for the room? Ting Yu seemed to have suddenly thought of something and suddenly asked. Return to the Prime Minister's residence tonight. Gao Momo treats mother so well, I have to properly repay her. Yarrow Mo Wan's pupils abruptly turned cold, a sharp glint like ice bursting forth from the depths of her eyes. At the side, Ting Yu and Liu Xing looked at each other in surprise. Come and sit. It's been a long day. It's time to rest. Yarrow Mo Wn turned her eyes and smiled towards Ting Yu and Liu Xing. That smile was as brilliant as the spring breeze and rain. It was as if she was a completely different person from before. At this moment, they truly believed that the third Miss had changed. She had become shrewd, calm, and wise. The golden crow descended from the west, and the jade rabbit rose from the east. The moonlight poured down like water, passing through the branches and leaving mottled shadows of the trees. As the wind blew, the shadows of the trees swayed, and the swaying shadows made the night exceptionally cold. Main hall of Prime Minister Yarrow's residence. After dinner, Yarrow too ordered the servants to remove the dishes. Do Xianglan rinsed her mouth with tea, then passed the cup to her maid Yuji. Her eyes seemed to inadvertently sweep over Yarrow Enchanting's left thumb, and her heart slightly trembled. Yuji, tell Gao Momo to hurry up, don't let Master wait anxiously. Master, did anything unhappy happen in court today? This concubine sees that your complexion isn't very good. Do Xianglan carefully asked. The Empress had a difficult birth, 1 corpse and 2 lives. Now that the position of Empress is vacant, all of the concubines in the inner palace are eager to try. When you have time, come to the palace more often and give Sulwan some pointers, so she'll be a bit more careful. Yarrow Enchanting frowned, not mentioning a single word about the matter at Yun de floor. Master, don't worry. Sulwan has always been obedient and sensible. Moreover, she has His Majesty's favor and is also a Guifei. Naturally, she's the best candidate for the Empress. In the future, she will definitely bring honor to the family. Do Xianglan deliberately placed great emphasis on the words bring honor to the family. In her heart, she silently cursed. Even if she had lost her virtue as a woman, with the support of a daughter who was about to become the Empress, she wasn't afraid of anything. It'd be best if it's as you wish. A cold light flashed through Yarrow Zhenting's eyes as he lightly said. Right at this moment, Gao Momo walked in with a bowl of lotus seed soup on her face. Master, the lotus seed soup is here. Please drink it while it's hot. As Gao Momo spoke, she placed the bowl in front of Yarrow Zhenting and respectfully opened it. Yarrow Zhenting let out a sigh of relief and casually picked up the spoon to scoop up the lotus seed soup. Just as he was about to put it into his mouth, Yarrow Mo Wan suddenly ran in with tears on her face. Mo Wan really misses father. Woo woo. Yarrow Mo Wan's appearance shocked everyone present, especially Do Xianglan. At this moment, Do Xianglan's gaze was sinister as she fiercely glared at Gao Momo. Gao Momo naturally had a wronged expression. Yarrow too, who was waiting at the door, was also very flabbergasted. He suspiciously looked towards Ting Yu who came in with Yarrow Mo Wan. I haven't seen you for 2 days. Where did you run off to? Yarrow Zhenting subconsciously looked at Do Xianglan. He originally thought that she would cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. Woo woo. Gao Momo told Mo Wan that mother went far away and had Mo Wan go look for her. But Mo Wan couldn't find her even after looking for a long time. Mother doesn't want Mo Wan anymore. Father, Mo Wan only has you left. Yarrow Mo Wan wiped her tears as she looked towards Yarrow Zhenting, sobbing intermittently. This old servant didn't. Big madam. Gao Momo never thought that Yarrow Mo Wan would say this. Cold sweat immediately seeped out of her forehead. Momo, the money you gave Mo Wan has all been spent. Woo woo. Yarrow Mo Wan wiped her tears with both hands and looked towards Gao Momo with a wronged expression. Gao Momo, you're really loyal. At the table, Do Xianglan naturally heard the clues and her voice was as cold as ice. No. Third miss, you can't speak irresponsibly. Gao Momo looked towards Yarrow Mo Wan in terror, her body trembling like a sieve. Father, Mo Wan is really hungry. Yarrow Mo Wan didn't pay any attention to Gao Momo's sorry state and timidly looked at Yarrow Zhenting. This is for you. Yarrow Zhenting originally didn't have an appetite, so he pushed the lotus seed soup in front of him in front of Yarrow Mo Wan like he was admiring a dog. In Yarrow Zhenting's eyes, daughters were goods that lost money. Even if Yarrow Mo Xin was the noble empress and Yarrow Sulwan was the noble Gui Fei, in Yarrow Zhenting's eyes, they were nothing more than tools for him to stabilize his position in court. Yarrow Mo Wan was naturally overjoyed and she immediately went forward to grab the soup cup. In everyone's eyes, perhaps Yarrow Mo Wan was too happy, so the soup cup fell to the ground in her excitement and the lotus seed soup spilled all over the floor. Unruly. Yuji, why haven't you taken third miss away yet? Do Xianglan's gaze turned cold and she looked towards Yuji with deep meaning. Heavenly Wolf. Quickly come back. Just as Yuji was about to go forward to grab Yarrow Mo Wan, a black-backed, green-eyed, wolf-like hunting dog suddenly rushed in from outside the door. Once that dog entered the main hall, it immediately rushed to the lotus seed soup on the floor and started licking it. Liu Xing, what's going on? Why haven't you pulled it out yet? If it startled Master, can you afford to take responsibility? When Yarrow too saw this, he immediately reprimanded him sternly. Sorry Master, sorry Steward. This lowly one will take it away right now. Liu Xing looked towards Yarrow too in panic and immediately went forward to pull Heavenly Wolf. Practically at the same time, Heavenly Wolf suddenly rolled all over the floor, howled a few times, then kicked its legs and died. This lotus seed soup is poisoned. When he saw the hunting dog die on the floor, Yarrow too immediately cried out in alarm and looked towards Gao Momo. With Yarrow too's calm and experienced personality, He naturally knew that this wasn't a coincidence. He also heard that Yarrow Mowan's words were directed at Gao Momo. This cry of alarm was just him pushing the boat along with the current, that's all. Preposterous. Yarrow Ting furrowed his brows and slapped the table as he stood up. He walked in front of Gao Momo with large strides, raised his foot and fiercely kicked her to the ground. Then he looked towards Do Xianglan. This is the good person you taught. Yarrow Ting's eyes widened in anger and he almost roared in a low voice. Master is wise, she's in Mo Li's room, it's definitely Mo Li. Do Xianglan hurriedly refuted but was cut off by Yarrow Ting's shout. This old man already knew who she belonged to. Whenever he thought of the scene at Yunda Floor, Yarrow Ting felt his internal organs churn like they were on fire. Father. Moen is afraid. At this time, Yarrow Mo Wn was like a frightened little deer as she rubbed against Yarrow Ting's side and spoke timidly. Moen, since you only have father left, then properly stay in Yarrow Fu. Father swears that as long as father is present, no one will dare to harm you. Someone, bring third miss back to her room to sleep. Yarrow Ting's cold gaze shot towards Do Xianglan as he spoke each word with a clear warning. Master. Do Xianglan still wanted to explain but Yarrow Ting had already flicked his sleeves and left. Seeing Yarrow Ting leave, Yarrow Tu immediately ordered Liu Xing to carry the hunting dog's corpse out and ordered Tingyu to bring Yarrow Mo Wn back to her room. Then he resentfully left the main hall. Master. Master, believe this old servant, this lotus seed soup isn't poisoned. How could this old servant dare to poison master, madam? Madam, this old servant really sold third miss to Pleasure Fragrance Courtyard. Third miss is lying, this is all her scheme. Madam, you have to believe this old servant. Seeing Yarrow Ting walk far away, Gao Momo hurriedly crawled up and knelt in front of Do Xianglan. She pressed her forehead to the ground and trembled non-stop. An idiot would conspire. Gao Momo, you're really humorous. Yu Ji, send Gao Momo into the violence room. Do Xianglan's gaze was cold as she spoke through clenched teeth. Then, ignoring Gao Momo's wailing, she directly got up and left the main hall. In this world, everyone who betrayed her had to die. Mo Li was like this, Gao Momo was also like this. Don't. Madam. This old servant has been wronged. Gao Momo wailed mournfully but her body was pulled out of the main hall by the guards like a dog and headed straight for the violence room. The violence room was the place where servants who committed mistakes were punished. Normally, servants who entered the violence room rarely came out alive. Even if they did, they would only be left with half a life. Midnight had already passed and the frost was cold. Gao Momo's wailing like a pig being slaughtered continued all the way until the hour of the Cho clan before intermittently stopping. Ninghua Pavilion. The room was quiet and silent. The candlelight swayed and the incense burner emitted green smoke in spirals. It was like a dream or fantasy. Miss, this is really satisfying. Tingyu walked to Yarrow Mo Wan's side from the window, unable to contain her joy. At the table, Yarrow Mo Wn had one hand by her cheek and the other hand was using a silver pick to lightly play with the candle wick. Her expression was so focused. Only when she heard Ting Yu's voice did she put down the silver pick and unhurriedly get up. Chapter 6. Miss, this servant used the silver and they left Gao Momo alive. Liu Xing saw it was Yarrow Mo Wn and immediately went to greet her. You guys wait outside. Yarrow Mo Wn slightly nodded and immediately opened the door to the woodshed and walked in. Outside the door, Tingyu looked suspiciously at Liu Xing. Doesn't Miss hate Gao Momo to death? Why did you leave her alive? I also don't know, but whatever Miss says, I will do. Liu Xing solemnly vowed. After Yarrow Mo Wn walked into the woodshed, she closed the door behind her and slowly walked to the oil lamp and lit the candle. Borrowing the light of the candlelight, Yarrow Mo Wn astonishingly saw that Gao Momo, who was covered in blood, was lying on a pile of straw, groaning in pain. Her hair was burnt yellow like withered grass by the fire, and her body was riddled with whip marks. Pus and blood mixed with minced meat covered her clothes, and her face looked extremely sinister from being branded by a branding iron. How could they have the heart to beat Momo like this? Could it be that they didn't find out that the lotus seed soup wasn't poisoned? Yarrow Mo Wan indifferently walked to Gao Momo's side and slowly squatted down. After hearing Yarrow Mo Wan's voice, Gao Momo's absent-minded mind immediately sobered up. Not poisoned. The lotus seed soup wasn't poisoned. Why did the dog die? This was the sentence that Xing Momo repeatedly asked her. Naturally, it was first poisoned by someone before it was put into the main hall. That lotus seed soup is made from ginseng and deer antler. Even people love it, not to mention dogs. Yarrow Mo Wan softly opened her mouth and patiently explained. Right, it must be, wrongly accused. I'm wrongly accused. I beg you to tell Master that I'm wrongly accused. Third Miss, why is it you? It's you who harmed me. Gao Momo raised her eyes in pleasant surprise, but when she saw Yarrow Mo Wan, her eyes filled with malevolence and her hands fiercely grabbed Yarrow Mo Wan's sleeves. Yes, it's me who harmed you. I purposely said in front of Do Xianglan that you were loyal to the old master, gave me a way out and gave me the silver. It was also me who had Liu Xing poison the dog to frame you, so what? Not to mention that you can't move an inch right now, even if you crawl to Do Xianglan's feet, she still needs to believe you. Yarrow Mo Wan's cherry lips slightly pouted and her gaze innocently looked at Gao Momo. You're so vicious. I will kill you. Gao Momo was already on the verge of death. Now she was so angry that blood gushed out of her mouth. I'm vicious. Gao Momo has really forgotten who poisoned my mother's soup and let her die with remaining grievances, who was the one who sold me into the pleasure fragrance courtyard, and let me suffer all kinds of humiliation, who was the one who hung Tingyu up here and beat her so badly that she almost lost her life. I'm afraid that even if you go to the 18th level of hell, it won't be enough to atone for your crimes. Yarrow Mo Wan's clear eyes were covered in frost as she coldly flicked her sleeves and indifferently stood up. You. Who are you? Gao Momo's eyes went round, looking at Yarrow Mo Wan in disbelief. Don't you recognize her, Nanny? I'm Moan Ah. Yarrow Moan's lips suddenly curved into a smile, her beautiful eyes flashing with a harmless light. Impossible. You are not. You're not that idiot. Who are you? Just as Gao Momo was roaring in anger, Yarrow Mo Wan had already taken out a bag of fallen goose sand powder from her sleeve and slowly sprinkled it on Gao Momo's wounds. Who I am, you will know very soon. Yarrow Mo Wan indifferently looked at Gao Momo, who was desperately struggling on the haystack. On her inscrutable face, not a trace of emotion could be seen. All of this was instigated by Big Madam. I deserve to die, but Big Madam deserves to die even more. Gao Momo used the last of her strength and finally spoke out her unwillingness. So I will let her live. A fate worse than death. The cold voice was like a ghost that lingered in the air above the woodshed and didn't disperse for a long time. After Yarrow Mo Wan left the woodshed, Gao Momo had already stopped breathing. Burn the woodshed. Yarrow Mo Wan looked at Liu Xing, who was waiting outside, and lightly ordered. Miss, but Gao Momo is already dead. Liu Xing said in confusion. But I want to grind her bones and scatter her ashes. What should I do? Yarrow Mo Wan stopped walking, her clear as water eyes gradually turning cold. Liu Xing will do it right away. Liu Xing firmly nodded and immediately turned to leave. The night was clear and cold, cold as ice. On the way back to Ninghua Pavilion, Tingyu wanted to speak several times, but in the end, she didn't say anything. Chapter 7. Tingyu, if you don't agree with my way of doing things, I'll give you a sum of money and send you away. For someone who hadn't experienced the pain she had, it was impossible for her to experience the pain she felt. Yarrow Mo Wan didn't blame Tingyu, but she couldn't take the risk of keeping someone who doubted her by her side. In Tingyu's eyes, whatever Miss does is right. In the future, as long as Miss instructs me, Tingyu will do it even if I have to sacrifice my life. Tingyu enunciated each word firmly. It's getting cold, let's go back. Yarrow Mo Wan pursed her lips and looked towards Tingyu with a smile. She believed that one day, Tingyu would understand her meaning. However, right now, she should have a good night's sleep. The next day, Yarrow Tu casually reported the fire in the firewood shed to Yarrow Zhenting. Yarrow Ting naturally wouldn't take this kind of small matter to heart and just brushed it off with a few words. How is the Empress's funeral going? Inside the study, Yarrow Ting leaned tiredly against the chair and asked. Since His Majesty had announced that the Empress had died from a difficult birth, he naturally had to give Yarrow Shin a grand funeral. As the bride's family, Yarrow Fu couldn't help but wear mourning clothes. Replying Laro Yi, everything has been prepared. We're just waiting for the imperial court to set the date, Yarrow Tu respectfully reported. All right, you can leave. Yarrow Ting rubbed his temples. Yarrow Shin and the esteemed prince had illicit relations, so even death couldn't wipe out her crimes. Right now, he only hoped that Yarrow Shin's matter wouldn't affect Yarrow Fu's position in His Majesty's heart. Otherwise, the gains wouldn't make up for the losses. Laro Yi. Lu Yushin has already been dealt with. Yunda opera troupe has also moved out of the imperial city and will never return, reported Yarrow Tu in a low voice. Even killing her doesn't relieve the hatred. If she didn't have a daughter who's a Guifei, this old man would have personally killed her. Yarrow Ting's brows furrowed and the pressure on his temples increased. This old servant will take his leave. Yarrow Tu was usually a man of few words. This was also one of the reasons Yarrow Ting trusted him. Ninghua pavilion sunlight passed through the crisscrossing window lattice and scattered mottled shadows. On the bed, Yarrow Wan's beautiful eyes fanned and her forehead was covered in sweat. The brocade bedding that she was gripping tightly was already wrinkled. Ah, Zhong. A mournful voice suddenly rang out. Yarrow abruptly stood up and panted heavily. Although it was a dream, the scene of the cold palace was incomparably real in Yarrow Moan's mind, making her feel as if she was actually there. Young miss, are you all right? At this moment, Tingyu ran in when she heard the noise and asked worriedly. It's nothing. It was just a nightmare. Has Liu woken up? Yarrow Wn wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes without leaving a trace and let out a long breath. He's here. He's waiting in the hall, Tingyu answered truthfully. Why didn't you wake me up? Bring the clothes over. Yarrow Wn lifted her eyes to look out the window. It was probably almost noon. This servant saw that Miss was too tired, so this servant didn't have the heart to wake Miss up. Seeing that Yarrow Wan was anxious, Tingyu immediately took down the clothes from the clothes rack and helped Yarrow Wan freshen up. When Yarrow Wan walked out of the inner room, Liu Xing was respectfully standing in the middle of the hall. Why aren't you sitting down? Yarrow Moan asked suspiciously. Liu Xing is a servant, there's no reason for me to sit and wait for young miss. Seeing Yarrow Wan walk out, Liu Xing's eyes subconsciously revealed a joyful expression. Yarrow Wan saw all of this and a trace of helplessness flashed through her heart. Liu Yusin died. Yarrow Wan didn't let Liu Xing sit down. It was good to let him clarify this layer of relationship so that he wouldn't be too deeply in love and bring trouble upon himself. Chapter 8. I remember. Liu Xing nodded firmly. Fortunately, Miss had intimidated those bastards with the identity of Yarrow Residence's 3,000 gold. Otherwise, he probably wouldn't have the life to serve Miss anymore. Spread the news that Liu Yusin had seen him before she disappeared, ordered Yarrow Moan. What does Miss mean? Liu Xing looked towards Yarrow Moan in confusion. It doesn't matter if other people know or not, but Darren must know, reminded Yarrow Moan. Liu Xing understands. Liu Xing understood. Just as he was about to leave, Yarrow Moan called him back. Have you found out about the esteemed prince's situation? If only life was like the first time they met, she really hoped that when Yi Junqing had saved her from the bandits that night, he had taken off the silver mask that had originally belonged to Yi Hongyi. By the time she found out the truth, she would have already become Yi Hongyi's princess consort. Replying Miss, there's no need to purposefully find out about the esteemed prince. Right now, the entire city is saying that the esteemed prince returned to court in defeat and couldn't take the blow, so he's completely dispirited in the esteemed prince residence. Every day, he would invite the ladies of Pleasant Fragrance Courtyard to drink and chat merrily. His Majesty remembered that he had once contributed to the country, so he wasn't punished and was instead rewarded. However, the esteemed prince only wants a jug of fine wine, so His Majesty sends people to bestow the best wine in the palace to the esteemed prince every day. Liu Xing told her everything he had heard. What a brilliant method, it really suits his sanctimonious style, muttered Yarrow Moen to herself as cold light flashed through her eyes. However, she didn't understand how Yi Junqing had ended up in such a state even though he held so many troops. The reason why she had signed the testimony back then, besides for her own zhong'er, was also because she had thought of this. However, no matter what, she was the one who had dragged Yi Junqing down, so it was only reasonable that she should go and take a look. At the entrance of Pleasant Fragrance Courtyard, the heavily made-up procuress put away the banknotes in Ting Yu's hands and happily pulled Yarrow Moen, who was dressed in travel clothes, onto the sedan chair. "Time to lift the sedan chair," shouted the procuress. The brothel keeper called out and the 7 sedan chairs outside Joyous Fragrance Courtyard were lifted at the same time, heading towards the esteemed prince residence. Along the way, the passers-by all glanced over and pointed at him. Most of their words were mocking Yi Junqing for being dispirited and dissolute, for not understanding the affairs of the country. There were also a few people who lamented the fact that this ambitious and ruthless character of his generation was unable to recover from the slightest setback. How sad. Inside the palanquin, Yarrow Moen listened to the conversation but didn't take it to heart. The common people of the city were just following the crowd and didn't know that the human heart was even more sinister than a tiger. If she bickered with them about this, she was afraid that she wouldn't be able to explain herself even if she spent the rest of her life. In this world, there was probably no one who understood Yi Hongyi more than she did. Yi Junqing was like a needle that was stuck in Yi Hongyi's chest. Every day it wasn't pulled out, he wouldn't be able to sleep well. The reason Yi Junqing was able to survive until now wasn't because Yi Hongyi cared about his brotherly ties, but because he was afraid of the opposition from the generals in court, so he didn't dare to act recklessly against Yi Junqing. Thus, he used this method to slander Yi Junqing's image among the generals. Once Yi Junqing was forgotten, he would get rid of him as soon as possible. "Descend the palanquin." The procuress voice rang out again. Yarrow Moen only felt the palanquin jolt slightly before it landed on the ground. At this time, she impatiently lifted the curtains of the palanquin and saw that the 6 prostitutes had already surrounded the esteemed prince residence. Compared to them, her movements were still a bit slow. "You guys have all rolled through a pile of prostitutes as well, so don't say that Aunt Gui didn't warn you. Be a bit more reserved and don't do anything out of line. Don't ask for merit, just don't make mistakes." Yarrow Moen heard everything clearly from the side and her lips curved slightly. It seemed that calling prostitutes every day was also one of Yi Hongyi's methods. "Aunt Gui, don't worry, us sisters only want to see Great Chu's most handsome man from afar. If Prince doesn't like it, we can't just throw ourselves at him, right?" "That's right, Aunt Gui, don't worry and go back. Just come and pick us up after 5. Chapter 9. The esteemed prince residence's architecture was unique. There were pavilions, terraces, and waterside pavilions scattered among the willows and pines. There were also rock gardens, flower beds, bonsai, and wisteria. Yarrow Moen followed those prostitutes who flocked to her like a flock of ducks, bypassing the side corridors and heading straight for the rear garden. This wasn't her first time coming to the esteemed prince residence. Back when the 5 dragons were fighting for the throne, she had passed through the esteemed prince residence's doorstep countless times in order for Yi Hongyi to successfully ascend the throne. Just how foolish had she been back then? She had prided herself on having a pair of bright eyes, but she couldn't see through Yi Hongyi's vicious heart. "It smells so good. Look, it's the esteemed prince." The women were wild with joy, interrupting Yarrow Moen's thoughts. As she stood at the end of the corridor, Yarrow Moen smelled a wondrous fragrance. What entered her eyes were hundreds of flowers, exotic herbs, and immortal vines. In the center of the garden, a 4-cornered pavilion rose from the ground. White marble pillars supported the main body of the pavilion. The path from the corridor to the pavilion was paved with white jade bricks. The orchids carved from pure gold were vivid and lifelike. Inside the pavilion, in front of the stone table, a tall figure stood alone with a brush in hand. His clothes were whiter than snow, his black hair fluttered, His long eyebrows slanted to his temples, and his beautiful eyes were as bright as stars. Under his tall nose were lips that appeared overly pale. Yi Junqing was worthy of being called Great Chu's most handsome man. That kind of handsomeness went without saying. The aura he exuded made him seem like a divine general who had walked out of an ancient painting and accidentally entered this mortal world. Peony and the sisters greet the esteemed prince. A soft and sweet voice rang out, and the women stopped in front of the pavilion one after another. Each of them put on their best postures and bowed to pay their respects. Listen up, other than this pavilion, go play anywhere else. Disperse. I'm warning you, if you dare approach the pavilion, be careful of your heads. A deep voice suddenly rang out. Only now did Yarrow Moen notice the man next to Yi Junqing. She recognized him. It was Ben Lei, the vanguard that Yi Junqing relied on the most. Esteemed prince. One of the women called out unwillingly. There was a flash of cold light. In the next second, the shining dagger under the woman's feet sank 3 inches into the ground. Ah! When the woman cried out, the others scattered like birds and beasts. Yarrow Moen froze in place, the corners of her lips twitching. As expected of his name, his temper was even more explosive than thunder. Come here. The clear and melodious voice was like rain pattering on celadon. When Yarrow Moen turned around, she heard a soft call. When she looked back, she saw that Yi Junqing was looking up at her. His ink-black eyes were filled with elegance. In the end, she had failed this kind of man. When she walked into the pavilion, Yarrow Moen immediately felt an extremely unfriendly gaze directed at her. However, she smiled faintly and bowed in greeting. May I know why Prince has called for Jingxin? Yarrow Moen spoke in a modest but not servile tone. Grind the ink. Yi Junqing dipped the brush into the inkstone and carefully drew a picture on the table. He barely raised his head to look at her. Yarrow Moen nodded and stood up. She walked to the front of the stone table and rolled up her sleeve with one hand. She picked up the ink block with the other and placed the grinding surface flat on the inkstone. Then, she carefully ground the ink in a certain direction. At this time, Yarrow Moen slightly glanced to the side. When she saw the clear water and ink moving around, it was just like a portrait of herself. In the painting, she had a pair of charming eyes and a pair of beautiful eyes. She was wearing a green smoky top and a pleated skirt. She remembered very clearly that this was what she was wearing that night when he had saved her. Her heart felt like it was being blocked by cotton wool. It had already been so many years, but he was still so stubborn. Prince, why are you still drawing her? If it wasn't for her, you wouldn't have fallen to this state, said Ben Lei hatefully as he glared at the painting. At almost the same time, Yi Junqing abruptly looked up, his eyes as sharp as an eagle's. Ben Lei choked. Prince, forgive this subordinate for saying something that shouldn't be said. The Empress is already dead, so why do you still have to suffer this? His Majesty clearly wants to ruin your reputation, then get rid of it. As long as you say the word, it's not impossible to change the dynasty. Although Ben Lei's temper was explosive, his thoughts were meticulous. Otherwise, Yi Junqing wouldn't have relied on him so heavily. Chapter 10. That's her handwriting. If she didn't want to, no one would be able to force her. The brush in Yi Junqing's hand was extremely light. Yarrow Moen saw this and knew that he didn't hold any resentment. However, the more Yi Junqing acted like this, the more her heart hurt. Even if Prince doesn't want to betray the Empress, there's no need to tolerate His Majesty's bullying. Prince should know better than this subordinate that the defeat this time was all His Majesty's plan, said Benjen angrily. If it wasn't for the defeat, this prince wouldn't have a reason to live like a drunkard. Only if this prince lived like a drunkard would he agree to not make that testimony public and give Morshine a grand burial as the Empress should. Yi Junqing put down the brush and blew on the scroll. His eyes were filled with undisguisable longing. Prince, how much have you done for this woman in this life? But she only knows how to protect that incapable ruler. Even in death, she still wants to use that testimony to restrain you. She owes you too much. Ben Lei's eyes were bloodshot as he roared and reached for the scroll. However, Yi Junqing pushed him back several meters and he crashed into a white marble pillar. Prince, cried Ben Lei in a low voice. You should leave. This prince's identity is special. If you come often, with Yi Hongyi's personality, he definitely won't let you off. Yi Junqing restrained the pain in his eyes as he spoke indifferently. Prince is willing to be trampled on by that incapable ruler, but Ben Lei isn't willing to be humiliated. Even being a farmer hoeing the fields is better than working for that muddle-headed ruler. Prince, take care. Ben Lei bids farewell. Men don't cry easily, but Ben Lei's face was already covered in tears. In front of the table, Yarrow Moen lowered her eyes and gritted her teeth. The pain in her heart was like a tide. Just how much did she owe Yi Junqing? Just as Yarrow Moen was grieving, Ben Lei suddenly grabbed her wrist. What are you grabbing her for? Asked Yi Junqing with a frown. She clearly heard our conversation earlier. This woman can't be left alive, replied Ben Lei cautiously as he wiped the tears from the corners of his eyes. Yarrow Moen was extremely speechless. She suddenly felt like she could be shot even while lying down. Let go of her. This prince believes that she won't tell anyone. Before Yarrow Moen could react, Yi Junqing had already grabbed her other hand. Your Highness. Just listen to this subordinate this once. Ben Lei looked towards Yi Junqing with a conflicted expression as he begged. If this prince says she won't, then she definitely won't. You can leave. Yarrow Moen sighed inwardly at Yi Junqing's insistence. Ben Lei didn't say anything, his bell-like eyes fiercely glared at Yarrow Moen. At this time, Yarrow Moen indifferently looked towards Ben Lei, not saying a word. She only knew that the more she spoke, the more mistakes she would make. The less she spoke, the less mistakes she would make. After a few seconds of confrontation, Ben Lei suddenly shook off Yarrow Moen's wrist and left angrily. As Yarrow Moen watched Ben Lei's departing figure, a faint smile flitted across her lips. Ben Lei had left because Yi Junqing was here. If Yi Junqing wasn't here, Yarrow Moen was quite relieved that Yi Junqing had such loyal helpers by his side. She owed Yi Junqing too much. There would come a day when she would return Yi Junqing a magnificent great chew. There are very few women who are as calm as you. After Ben Lei left, Yi Junqing indifferently let go of Yarrow Moen's hand and walked over to the table to lightly stroke the painting. So Prince believes that Jingxin had received special training, that's why she appeared here? Yarrow Moen picked up the ink ingot again as she asked this casually. However, a trace of bitterness flashed through her heart. So when they met again, Yi Junqing had actually thought of her as a spy sent by Yi Hongyi to spy on him. Is that not the case? Yi Junqing disapproved. Then why did Prince allow that young general to say such disgraceful words? Yarrow Moen was slightly astonished and looked towards Yi Junqing suspiciously. Yi Hongyi's target is this prince. It's enough as long as this prince doesn't go against Jingxin, isn't that right? Yi Junqing looked towards Yarrow Moen meaningfully. The meaning behind his words was that if it weren't for him stopping her, she would have been chopped into pieces by Ben Lei already. Jingxin will return Prince this favor. Yarrow Moen went with the flow and continued to grind. Chapter 11. Esteemed Prince, a jug of wine every day. This old servant has delivered it. And Bingshan narrowed his eyes. He didn't salute and just placed the purple jade wine jug in front of Yi Junqing. Steward Ju. Yi Junqing didn't even look at An Bingshan. He only ordered Steward Ju to pour the wine and then drank it all in one gulp. Gong Gong can return to report, said Yi Junqing coldly as he put down the wine cup. When An Bingshan heard this, he smirked, bowed slightly, and turned to leave. At the side, Yarrow Moen furrowed her brows and her gaze turned cold. From this, she could tell that there was something fishy about the wine. Prince drew the Empress's portrait in front of Gong Gong. Aren't you afraid that His Majesty will blame you? As Yarrow Moen spoke, she glanced at the wine cup next to the inkstone. This prince just wants to remind Yi Hongyi that if it wasn't for Morshine, how could he have been able to suppress this prince? So no matter if Morshine is alive or dead, he has to treat her well. Yi Junqing's words were like sharp blades piercing through Yarrow Moen's heart. Blood dripped down, turning into red spider lilies. Steward Ju, clean up this place. After all the acting was done, Yi Junqing slowly put away the painting and walked down from the pavilion. 1 painting a day. This was already the 10th painting he had done. The wind blew and the veil of the pavilion fluttered. A few flower petals landed on Yaromoan's shoulders and a cold feeling brushed past her face. Before she could wipe it away, it was already blown away by the wind. Yi Junqing, even if I return your country, how can I return your unregretful love? Around 5 o'clock, the women of Pleasant Fragrance Courtyard all walked out of the Sioux Prince residence like frosted eggplants. The procuress knew this would happen, so she didn't say anything. These are the remaining silver taels. Thank you, Aunt Gooey, for making things convenient for us. Yaromoan took out 300 taels banknotes and handed them to the procuress as she thanked her gently. It was nothing, there's no need for Miss to be so polite. If there's nothing else, I'll be leaving first. The procuress's eyes opened wide at the sight of money. Yaromoan nodded slightly. When the 6 palanquins left the esteemed prince residence, she turned to return to Prime Minister Yaro's residence. I knew you were up to no good. Now I've caught you red-handed. Just as Yaromo was about to turn the corner, Ben Lei suddenly appeared and blocked in front of her. If I wasn't looking for you, I would have followed the palanquin back just now. Her clear eyes shone like stars, without a single ripple. Do you think I'll believe your nonsense? Ben Lei looked towards Yaromoan in alarm and snorted coldly. This is the cup that was used to hold the imperial wine. Secretly find someone to find out what kind of poison was mixed into it, then find the antidote and think of a way to cure Prince's body of the poison. You have to do it quietly and make sure that Prince doesn't find out. As Yaromo spoke, she took out the wine cup from the stone table from her sleeve and handed it to Ben Lei. What do you mean? Ben Lei looked towards Yaromoan in disbelief. For a moment, he didn't know what to do. You know Prince's temperament the best. Since you can't persuade him, then protect him properly. There will be plenty of time in the future, there's no need to be impatient. When she saw Ben Lei standing there in a daze, Yaromoan forcefully shoved the cup into Ben Lei's hands and turned to leave. Who are you? Why are you helping Prince? Ben Lei came back to his senses and asked anxiously. Shish. Yaromoan didn't reply and only shushed him lightly before leaving. Outside Prime Minister Yaro's residence, when Tingyu saw Yaromoan's figure appear in her line of sight, she immediately went out to greet her. Miss, you worried you to death. Are you all right? Tingyu looked at Yaromoan worriedly. Seeing that she was fine, she finally let out a sigh of relief. Chapter 12. Esteemed Prince, a jug of wine every day. This old servant has delivered it. And Bingshan narrowed his eyes. He didn't salute and just placed the purple jade wine jug in front of Yi Junqing. Steward Ju. Yi Junqing didn't even look at An Bingshan. He only ordered Steward Ju to pour the wine and then drank it all in one gulp. Gong can return to report, said Yi Junqing coldly as he put down the wine cup. When An Bingshan heard this, he smirked, bowed slightly, and turned to leave. At the side, Yaromoan furrowed her brows and her gaze turned cold. From this, she could tell that there was something fishy about the wine. Prince drew the Empress's portrait in front of Gong. Aren't you afraid that His Majesty will blame you? As Yaromoan spoke, she glanced at the wine cup next to the inkstone. This prince just wants to remind Yi Hongyi that if it wasn't for Morshine, how could he have been able to suppress this prince? So no matter if Morshine is alive or dead, he has to treat her well. Yi Junqing's words were like sharp blades piercing through Yaromoan's heart. Blood dripped down, turning into red spider lilies. Steward Ju, clean up this place. After all the acting was done, Yi Junqing slowly put away the painting and walked down from the pavilion. 1 painting a day. This was already the 10th painting he had done. The wind blew and the veil of the pavilion fluttered. A few flower petals landed on Yaromoan's shoulders and a cold feeling brushed past her face. Before she could wipe it away, it was already blown away by the wind. Yi Junqing, even if I return your country, how can I return your unregretful love? Around 5 o'clock, the women of Pleasant Fragrance Courtyard all walked out of the Sioux Prince residence like frosted eggplants. The procuress knew this would happen, so she didn't say anything. These are the remaining silver taels. Thank you Aunt Gui for making things convenient for us. Yarrow Moen took out 300 taels banknotes and handed them to the procuress as she thanked her gently. It was nothing, there's no need for Miss to be so polite. If there's nothing else, I'll be leaving first. The procuress's eyes opened wide at the sight of money. Yarrow Moen nodded slightly. When the 6 palanquins left the esteemed prince's residence, she turned to return to Prime Minister Yarrow's residence. I knew you were up to no good, now I've caught you red-handed. Just as Yarrow Moen was about to turn the corner, Ben Lei suddenly appeared and blocked her way. If I wasn't looking for you, I would have followed the palanquin back just now. Her clear eyes shone like stars, without a single ripple. Do you think I'll believe your nonsense? Ben Lei looked towards Yarrow Moen in alarm and snorted coldly. This is the cup that was used to hold the imperial wine. Secretly find someone to find out what kind of poison was mixed into it, then find the antidote and think of a way to cure Prince's body of the poison. You have to do it quietly and make sure that Prince doesn't find out. As Yarrow Moen spoke, she took out the wine cup from the stone table from her sleeve and handed it to Ben Lei. What do you mean? Ben Lei looked towards Yarrow Moen in disbelief. For a moment, he didn't know what to do. You know Prince's temperament the best. Since you can't persuade him, then protect him properly. There will be plenty of time in the future, there's no need to be impatient. When Yarrow Moen saw Ben Lei standing there in a daze, she forcefully shoved the cup into Ben Lei's hands and turned to leave. Who are you? Why are you helping Prince? Ben Lei came back to his senses and asked anxiously. Shish, Yarrow Moen didn't reply and only shushed him lightly before leaving. Outside Prime Minister Yarrow's residence, when Ting Yu saw Yarrow Moen's figure appear in her line of sight, she immediately went out to greet her. Miss, you worried you to death. Are you all right? Ting Yu looked at Yarrow Moen worriedly. Seeing that she was fine, she finally let out a sigh of relief. Chapter 13. Mother, Sulwan will go accompany His Majesty first. Just bear with it for a few more hours. In a bit, after the minister's kowtow, just send a servant girl over to keep watch. On the left side of the morning hall, Yarrow Sulwan saw that Yi Hongyi had left and immediately threw off the white morning dress she was wearing. Don't worry, Mother knows what to do. I've already endured when I was alive, there's only a bit left. Do Xianglan nodded. After leaving the morning hall, Yarrow Sulwan looked everywhere in the front courtyard but didn't see Yi Hongyi's figure, so she hurriedly went to the back garden. Compared to the hustle and bustle in the front courtyard, the back garden was extremely quiet. Yi Hongyi leaned against the side of the jade arch bridge, his serene eyes indifferently looking at the colorful koi in the jade lake. An inexplicable smile flashed across the corner of his lips. This was where he had first met Yarrow Morshin. At that time, Yarrow Morshin had been feeding the fish here and had almost fallen. It was him who had saved her. Morshin, Jean really hoped that you could be a bit more stupid, even if you were just pretending to be stupid. You should know that Jean has nowhere to hide with your wisdom, it makes Jean feel that living is lowly. Jean is very tired, Jean doesn't like that feeling. Yarrow Morshin, it was you who trampled Jean's wisdom under your feet. So you deserve to die. Your Majesty, so you were here. This made Chen Kie look for you for a long time. Yarrow Sulwan's appearance interrupted Yi Hongyi's thoughts. Jean really doesn't want to see that lowly woman for even a moment, even if it's ashes. Yi Hongyi restrained the resentment in his eyes and turned to look towards Yarrow Sulwan. Chen Kie knows that your Majesty doesn't like her. Chen Kie also feels ashamed to have that kind of older sister. It's rare that your Majesty is benevolent and is even willing to give her a grand burial. It really is good fortune that she cultivated for several lifetimes. Yarrow Sulwan's eyes flashed. Your Majesty, it looks like it's about to rain. Chen Kie will accompany you back to your room. If you don't like it, Chen Kie can accompany you back to the palace. Seeing that Yi Hongyi didn't say anything, Yarrow Sulwan's cherry lips curved slightly and she grabbed Yi Hongyi's arm with both hands. Don't break the ancestral rules. Just stay in Prime Minister Fu for a night. Jean is also tired after a day of torment. Jean will go rest in your room, said Yi Hongyi indifferently. Yarrow Sulwan was naturally overjoyed and immediately pulled Yi Hongyi towards Plum Pavilion. When Yarrow Moen heard the footsteps gradually getting further away, she walked out from behind the fake mountain with heavy steps. As she watched Yi Hongyi and Yarrow Sulwan's figures gradually become indistinct, Yarrow Moen felt as if her chest was being ruthlessly pierced by an awl until it split into pieces. After the numbness from the pain, only hatred remained. "Young miss, the ministers in the front courtyard have already left. Big Madam has returned to Bamboo Wish Pavilion and Master is resting in the front courtyard. Liu Xing has already finished preparing everything." When Ting Yu saw Yarrow Moen on the fake mountain, she walked over and reported in a low voice. "Tell Liu Xing that everything will proceed as planned." The light voice carried a bone-piercing chill. Yarrow Mo Wan's beautiful eyes turned cold and her lips curled into an icy smile. In Bamboo Wish Loft, Do Xianglan sat paralyzed on a chair, struggling to take the teacup Ping Ji handed her. "When she was alive, she was an eyesore, and even after death, she won't let me rest. I stood guard for her for an entire day and didn't even get a sip of water. How unlucky. Knock here, my legs are so sore I can't even lift them," complained Do Xianglan as she took a big gulp of tea. "Eldest Madam, please calm your anger. In any case, this is the last time. In the future, no matter if it's Mo Li or Yarrow Mo Shin, they won't appear in front of Madam again." Ping Ji half squatted down and massaged Do Xianglan's legs, eagerly appeasing her. "Ian, if I think about this, I feel a bit better. It's just that if Yarrow Mo Wan doesn't die, I won't be able to swallow this." Do Xianglan slowly leaned back on the chair, narrowing her phoenix eyes. "Eldest Madam, when do you plan to deal with that fool?" asked Yu Xian as he raised his head. "You also heard what Master said in the main hall that day. Let's wait for a few more days." "Oh right, did those scoundrels hand over the jade hearts?" Do Xianglan suddenly remembered her little sweetheart and immediately sat up, asking this question seriously. Replying, "Eldest Madam, the hired thugs we sent locked them up and beat them half to death, but they still couldn't find out young Master Lu's whereabouts. This servant reckons that they really don't know," guessed Ping Ji. Chapter 14. "First Madam, someone just handed this box to this lowly one and said that this lowly one should personally give this box to Madam." As the servant spoke, he carefully placed the box on the table. "All right, you can leave." Ping Ji saw that her master was getting impatient and immediately waved her hand to signal for the servant to leave. "What is this? Open it and see." Do Xianglan didn't think much of it and raised her teacup to take a sip. Ping Ji didn't mind. She just assumed that it was a gift from those people who wanted to follow the Prime Minister, so she stepped forward and opened the box. Ah! The moment she opened the box, Ping Ji's eyes suddenly widened and her face turned deathly pale. She stumbled backwards and fell to the ground, her body trembling uncontrollably. "What's wrong?" Do Xianglan looked towards Ping Ji suspiciously and walked over to the box. When she saw the bloody head in the box, the teacup in Do Xianglan's hand fell to the ground with a bang and she froze in shock. Ping Ji suppressed her fear and staggered up to close the door. Then she stumbled over to Do Xianglan's side and said shakily, Madam, that seems to be is young Master Lu's head." Yusin. Who was it? Who was it that did this? I will avenge you." "Ah." Do Xianglan, who had regained her senses, suddenly threw herself onto the box and held Lu Yusin's head with both hands. Tears gushed out of her eyes and she wailed loudly. Seeing Do Xianglan like this, Ping Ji inwardly rejoiced that today was Yarrow Morshin's spirit tribute day. Otherwise, her crying would definitely attract attention. "First Madam, don't be like this. The dead can't come back to life. It wouldn't be good if someone found out." Even so, Ping Ji still cautiously comforted her. Just as Ping Ji gathered her courage to help Do Xianglan up, she suddenly saw a note stuck on the box. Lu Yusin was killed by Yarrow Zhenting. 5 years ago, Madam took Yarrow Zhenting as third Madam and they had a son. Third Madam currently lives in the eastern part of the city, the Su residence. Ping Ji picked up the note and stammered. "What?" Do Xianglan's eyes widened as she snatched the note from Ping Ji's hands with her blooded hands. Seeing the contents of the note, Do Xianglan's entire body trembled in anger. Her blood boiled and her anger soared to the heavens. She immediately charged out of Bamboo Wish Pavilion without a care for anything else. Madam, please don't act recklessly. Pingji knew that the situation was not good and hurriedly chased after her. Seeing Do Xianglan and Pingji run out of Bamboo Wish Pavilion, Tingyu secretly tailed them. Only when she saw Do Xianglan and Tingyu run out of Yaroxiongfu and head straight for the east of the city did Tingyu feel reassured and return to the Fu to find Liu Xing. In a side room in the front courtyard, Enchanting was resting with his eyes closed, secretly thinking about how to help Sulwan ascend to the position of Empress next. At this time, the door to the room was suddenly pushed open. Master, it's bad. Liu Xing entered the room with a face full of fear, and knelt down in front of Enchanting. What is it? Enchanting frowned, looking irritably at Liu Xing. Something happened to First Madam. Just now, this servant saw First Madam rush out like a madwoman and run towards the east of the city. She kept shouting kill 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 kill, and said something about Third Madam, young master. Liu Xing anxiously reported. What? This is bad. Enchanting was shocked when he heard this and immediately jumped out of his chair. He didn't even bother to put on his boots as he hurriedly ran out. Yao Tu. Prepare the palanquin. Quickly prepare the palanquin. Enchanting had always known that Do Xianglan was easily jealous. Now that she found out that he had taken in Su Muzi outside the Fu and even had a son, he was afraid that there would be a big mess. When he saw Enchanting leave Yaroxiongfu on the palanquin, Liu Xing didn't dare tarry for even a second and immediately ran towards Essence Condensation Pavilion. Inside Essence Condensation Pavilion, Yaromo Wn sat in front of a bronze mirror and indifferently looked at the beautiful face in the mirror. Her eyes were filled with cold light. Chapter 15. Understood. Tingyu, let's go. Yaromo Wn tried her best to maintain the smile on her face as she slowly got up. Miss, you're really going to enter the palace? Liu Xing swallowed hard and forced himself to ask. This is my only way out. Yaromo Wn saw the conflict and reluctance in Liu Xing's eyes. Unfortunately, her life had already been turned upside down in Happy Spring Courtyard. Inside Plum Pavilion, the music was moving. Yi Hongyi lazily sat on a wisteria bamboo chair in the main hall, his fingers playing with the jade pendant at his waist. His dark eyes were full of interest as he admired the dancing Yarosulwan in the center of the hall. He saw Yarosulwan's feet touch the ground, her body like a colorful butterfly dancing among flowers, beautiful and moving. Yi Hongyi had to admit that Yarosulwan's dance was truly unique in the entire inner palace. Watching her dance could be considered a pleasure. When the dance was over, Yarosulwan's charming eyes were like silk. Just as she was about to properly serve Yi Hongyi, there was a sudden clamor outside the door. Your Majesty, please calm your anger. This concubine will go out to take a look. When Yarosulwan saw Yi Hongyi's gaze darken, she immediately ordered the musicians to play some cheerful tunes and quickly walked out of the room. Outside Plum Pavilion, Yarosulwan's personal maid Cai Ying was blocking Tingyu, who was about to rush in. Who's making a racket outside and startling the emperor? How many heads do you have to be chopped off? When Yarosulwan walked out of Plum Pavilion, she saw Tingyu and Cai Ying fighting. Niang, this girl. Before Cai Ying could finish, Tingyu suddenly pushed Cai Ying away and rushed in front of Yarosulwan. Guifei Niang, it's bad. Big Madam found out that Master took in 3 wives outside and even gave birth to a son. She angrily went to find them and said that she was going to kill that mother and son. When Master found out, he also chased after them. It seems that he even had a knife in his hand. Tingyu looked at Yarosulwan anxiously as she reported. Yarosulwan trembled slightly when she heard this and looked at Tingyu suspiciously. Father took in 3 wives. How come Ben Gong didn't know? If Ben Gong didn't remember incorrectly, you seem to be the second wife's maid. Yarosulwan's gaze gradually turned cold as she spoke. This servant is Tingyu. Just now, this servant personally saw Da Furen rush out like a madwoman. Laro Yi also chased after her in the palanquin. Tingyu saw that Yarrow Sulwan was so calm and panicked inside. Her tone was slightly lacking. Just as Yarrow Sulwan was about to speak again, Yarrow too suddenly ran over from behind. Your Highness Consort Li, something bad has happened. You should go to the Su residence in the eastern part of the city. Apart from you, no one can persuade Master. First Madam is in grave danger. Yarrow too panted as he reported. Seeing it was Yarrow too, Yarrow Sulwan's heart thumped. She immediately pushed Tingyu aside and walked in front of Yarrow too. Is what you're saying true? Yarrow Sulwan had grown up in the Prime Minister Fu, so she naturally knew of Yarrow too's steadiness and loyalty. Old Master has a third madam outside, and his child is already 4 years old. You know First Madam's temper the best, and you also know Old Master's love for his son. If we still don't go, the consequences will be unimaginable. Yarrow too said worriedly with panic in his eyes. But what about His Majesty's side? Yarrow Sulwan was a filial daughter in the end. When she heard that something had happened to her mother, she was a bit flustered. Saving a person is like fighting a fire. Your Highness, shouldn't you explain things to His Majesty after you return? Yarrow too suggested. Forget it. Yarrow too, lead the way. Cai Ying, take a trip with Ben Gong. Yarrow Sulwan's willowy brows were tightly furrowed as she rushed towards the residence's entrance. Seeing Yarrow too bring Yarrow Sulwan and Cai Ying away, Tingyu fiercely wiped away the cold sweat on her forehead. At this time, Yarrow Mo Wan had already walked into Plum Pavilion. Miss. Tingyu looked towards Yarrow Mo Wan worriedly. Stand guard outside. Say that it's second Miss's orders and that no one is allowed to come in. Yarrow Mo Wan's voice was as calm as a calm lake, but it contained an unconcealable coldness. Her eyes that were as beautiful as butterfly feathers stared straight at the door of Plum Pavilion. The music inside swept past her ears. Yarrow Mo Wan's lips curled up in ridicule. This was her spirit tribute day, it really was lively. Chapter 16. Seeing the surging emotions in Yi Hongyi's eyes, the corners of Yarrow Mo Wan's lips curved slightly. Her body suddenly leaned backwards, her jade legs wrapped around Yi Hongyi's waist as she tilted her head back to pick up the glistening crystal grape on the table with her mouth. Her rainbow-colored feather dress fluttered in the wind. Yarrow Mo Wan's beautiful and alluring posture caused Yi Hongyi's blood to boil. At this time, Yarrow Mo Wan exerted strength on one foot and the jade leg wrapped around Yi Hongyi's waist slowly came down. She raised her snow-white neck and slowly brought the grape in her mouth to Yi Hongyi. In the next second, Yi Hongyi suddenly grabbed Yarrow Mo Wan's arm and fiercely pulled her into his embrace. His fingers slowly pulled down the light veil on Yarrow Mo Wan's face. His thin lips lowered as he swallowed the grape into his stomach. His eyes seemed to shine with a dark light as if he had found prey. Your Majesty. A sweet voice slowly spilled out. Yarrow Mo Wan felt her stomach roll. Facing this man she had loved with all her heart for 7 years, she suddenly wanted to vomit. That kind of nausea spread out from every hair on her body. Beauty, what's your name? Yi Hongyi's finger brushed across Yarrow Mo Wan's snow-white neck, following the beautiful curve to her chest. He abruptly undid the laces of the feather dress. Under the purple undergarments, the bountiful body that was about to come out caused Yi Hongyi's breathing to become increasingly heavy. I'm Yarrow Mo Wan, the Wan from Graceful and Courteous. Does your Majesty like it? Yarrow Mo Wan's beautiful eyes flashed as she looked innocently towards Yi Hongyi. Yi Hongyi's sword-like brows furrowed, a faint coldness rising in his eyes. The Empress's blood-related younger sister? Ha! The Empress's Memorial Day, aren't you sad? Yi Hongyi felt half of the passion in his heart being extinguished by ice water. Mo Wan is an idiot. Idiots won't be sad. Yarrow Mo Wan's jade arms lightly raised and wrapped around Yi Hongyi's neck as she replied seriously. Oh! A faint flame reignited in Yi Hongyi's eyes. He had heard Yarrow Mo Shin mention this idiot younger sister of hers before, but he had never met her. Compared to Jejia, Mo Wan has been considered an idiot since childhood. As long as Jejia is here, Mo Wan is an idiot. Jejia is finally gone, Mo Wan is finally free. Your Majesty, Do you think Mo Wan is an idiot? Yarrow Mo Wan's cherry lips slightly parted, her clear eyes sparkling. Yarrow Mo Wan's words resonated with Yi Hongyi. That's right, as long as Yarrow Morshin was alive, everyone in the world would think that he was an idiot, a piece of trash. Now that Yarrow Morshin was dead, he was free. What should we do? I like fools. Seeing Yarrow Moan pressed up against his chest, the most primitive impulse in Yi Hongyi's heart gradually grew stronger. His hand was already impatiently moving up Yarrow Moan's jade leg, straight into her feather skirt. Mo Wan is an idiot. Yarrow Mo Wan's soft voice softened Yi Hongyi's bones. Yi Hongyi abruptly carried Yarrow Moan in his arms and strode into the bedroom. In the main hall, all the musicians looked at each other and left the plum pavilion dejectedly. On the bed, Yarrow Mo Wan wriggled her delicate body like a snake, as if she was a colorful fox wandering in the wilderness. Every movement was extremely enticing, her silky eyes never leaving Yi Hongyi for a moment. Chapter 17. Yarrow Mo Wan pretended to enjoy it as she responded to Yi Hongyi's passion. Her smooth jade fingers caressed Yi Hongyi's back. At this moment, she suddenly really wanted to stab her fingers into Yi Hongyi's back and dig out his heart to see what color the blood flowing on it was. We like you, do you believe it? Feeling the heat on his back, Yi Hongyi's movements gradually became more and more rough. At this time, the last piece of underwear on Yarrow Mo Wan's body was sent flying. Mo Wan doesn't know how to use her brain. Whatever your majesty says, Mo Wan believes. Seeing Yi Hongyi, who was lying on top of her chest, a cold light flashed through Yarrow Mo Wan's eyes. You're really beautiful. Yarrow Mo Wan's young body always exuded a temptation that men couldn't resist. The corners of Yarrow Mo Wan's lips slowly curved. Yarrow Mo Wan, this demon has finally jumped into your trap and is slowly sinking. So you have to smile, smile. Mo Wan's beauty is only for your majesty to see. Hey! Yarrow Mo Wan's brows furrowed slightly and she moaned lightly. A certain part of her body suddenly felt as if it was being torn apart, but the curve of her lips only became a bit more serious. This tight body was like a butterfly breaking out of its cocoon, raising Yi Hongyi's passion to the limit. A man's most primitive, beastly light burst forth from his dark eyes. Yi Hongyi's hands pressed against Yarrow Mo Wan's snow-white shoulders, doing his utmost to absorb her beauty. There were so many women in the imperial harem, but there wasn't a single one that could give him such an ecstatic feeling like the lovely person beneath him. Yi Hongyi was intoxicated by this wonderful body, letting loose the depression and annoyance he'd felt these past few days. Looking at Yi Hongyi's cold handsome face dripping with sweat, a trace of disdain and coldness flashed through Yarrow Mo Wan's eyes. She could tell that Yi Hongyi liked this body, liked it very much. Your Majesty. Be gentler. This servant hurts. Yarrow Mo Wan softly moaned as she shyly looked towards Yi Hongyi. Tears welled up in her eyes. Her delicate and lovely appearance once again caused Yi Hongyi's mind to crumble. If it hurts, then scream. Don't hold it in. Yi Hongyi panted heavily as his hoarse voice rang out intermittently. His body continued to attack the ground. Being tender and protective of the fairer sex wasn't his style. All he wanted was to enjoy, to have everyone in the world submit and revere him. Ah! So painful. Yarrow Mo Wan obediently satisfied Yi Hongyi's despicable selfishness, her voice soft and alluring. Thus, Yi Hongyi could no longer hold back and sprinted forward with all his might, climbing towards the clouds alone. Dark clouds loomed overhead, muffled thunder rumbled, and lead-colored clouds rolled and surged. The air was filled with the smell of an impending storm. In the Su mansion in the eastern part of the city, a burst of howling broke the usual tranquility. In the main courtyard, Do Xianglan was like a mad dog as she grabbed Su Mu's hair and ruthlessly spun her to the ground. Then, she lifted her foot and kicked Su Muzi, whose face was already full of scratches, with all her might as she cursed. I should have guessed it was you, you lowly slave. You were lucky that I didn't kill you 5 years ago, but today, I'll skin you alive. Lowly slave, lowly slave. Seductive fox demon. You only know how to seduce men. Do Xianglan's expression was malevolent, glaring at Su Muzi. Her scarlet eyes seemed to be spitting fire as she glared at Su Muzi. She kicked fiercely with one foot and attacked with both hands, pinching and twisting Su Muzi until her body was covered in bruises. Bad woman. Let go of my mother. Right at this time, a little boy about 4 or 5 years old ran out of nowhere and charged at Do Xianglan with a face full of anger. He bit her until Do Xianglan squeaked loudly. Chapter 18. Pingji. What are you waiting for? Come and pull them apart. Do Xianglan roared fiercely, glaring at Pingji. At the side, Pingji originally wanted to stay out of this, but since her master had spoken, she obviously could not remain indifferent, so she forcefully pulled Yarrow Yu away. No. I beg you to let Yu go, he is still a child. Do Xianglan's slaps rained down, hitting Su Muzi until the corner of her lips bled. Just when Su Muzi was powerless to resist, a lion's roar suddenly came from the mansion's entrance. Stop. Yarrow Enchanting looked at the scene in front of him, his usually gentle face suddenly filled with anger. While everyone was still in a daze, Yarrow Enchanting had already rushed in front of Pingji, kicked her away, and hugged Yarrow Yu in his arms. Do Xianglan, have you been crazy enough? Yarrow Enchanting growled in a low voice, walking towards Do Xianglan step by step. Master actually asked me if I've been crazy enough. This concubine still hasn't asked Master what is going on yet. How can there be a third madam out of nowhere? And that bastard. Because of her anger, Do Xianglan's finger that was pointing at Su Muzi trembled like a loom, her face twisted like a devil. Without waiting for Do Xianglan to react, the left side of her face suddenly swelled up, 5 clear finger marks floating on it. Old Master. You actually hit me for this lowly servant. I'll fight you to the death. Do Xianglan was stunned, suddenly madly rushed towards Yarrow Enchanting. Luckily she was stopped by Pingji. Do Xianglan. You listen to this old man. Yarrow Yu is not a bastard, he is this old man's son. The eldest son who will inherit my Yarrow family's bloodline. Yarrow Enchanting's eyes were like torches, coldly speaking, hugging Yarrow Yu even tighter. Pay. Without this concubine's approval, this lowly servant will never be able to step into the Yarrow mansion's door. The thing she gave birth to is naturally a nameless bastard. Feeling Yarrow Enchanting's anger, Do Xianglan spat, but did not rush forward to fight. Do Xianglan. Don't think that this old man doesn't know what you've been doing outside. It's good for everyone to leave each other some face. Get lost right now. From now on, you're not allowed to disturb this mother and son. You're not allowed to take even half a step into the Su residence. Yarrow Enchanting warned in a deep voice. It would have been better if Yarrow Enchanting didn't mention it, but now that he mentioned it, Do Xianglan suddenly recalled Lu Yusin's tragic death, and her heart instantly felt a wave of pain as rage once again surged to her head. You killed Yushin, I want this bastard's life to pay for it. No matter how Pingji tried to drag her, she was unable to stop Do Xianglan, who was like a mad dog. But she had forgotten that no matter how fierce a woman was, how could she resist a man's strength? Do Xianglan. Don't think that this old man won't dare to kill you. Yarrow Enchanting's eyes were filled with anger, his hand fiercely clutching Do Xianglan's neck, his fingers slowly tightening. Hey! You! Let go! Do Xianglan's hands fiercely twisted Yarrow Enchanting's fingers, her face turning from red to purple as she rolled her eyes. At the side, Pingji knelt on the ground and begged for mercy. But right now, Yarrow Enchanting's anger had already reached its limit. Every time he thought of Do Xianglan and that performer's dirty affairs, how Do Xianglan kept cursing his most treasured son, his hands couldn't stop. Father is really going to kill Ben Gong's birth mother for this lowly woman? The icy voice contained a faint chill. Just as Do Xianglan was at her last gasp, Yarrow Sulwan suddenly stepped into the Su residence. Behind her, Cai Ying also followed. Yarrow Sulwan's appearance reversed the current situation. Yarrow Enchanting hesitated for a moment, but in the end, he let go of Do Xianglan and walked to Su Muzi's side to pull her up. This humble woman, Su Muzi, kowtows in salute to your highness consort Li. Su Muzi was originally a servant girl of the Yarrow residence. Due to her beauty, Do Xianglan was jealous. Later on, Do Xianglan discovered that Yarrow Enchanting was interested in this servant girl, so she found a reason to beat her up and kick her out of the Yarrow residence. Thus, Su Muzi knew everything about the Yarrow family. Chapter 19. Under Cai Ying's support, Yarrow Su Luan hurriedly walked into the main hall. The people in the courtyard followed after, and the temperature in the entire main hall dropped to freezing point. Yarrow Fu's plum pavilion. The crack of heavenly thunder startled the drowsy Yarrow Mo Wan on the soft couch. Her long and slender eyes slowly opened and saw that Yi Hongyi was currently lying on top of her completely naked body, looking at her with an evil smile on his face. Zhen's little vixen without Zhen's permission, how could you fall asleep? Yi Hongyi lovingly played with the cherry on Yarrow Mo Wan's chest, his eyes filled with dissatisfaction and ridicule. Your Majesty, this servant is tired. Yarrow Mo Wan's slender arms wrapped around Yi Hongyi's neck, her voice clearly a bit tired. This was already the third time Yi Hongyi looked at her with this kind of gaze. Yarrow Moan was very satisfied with Yi Hongyi's greed. The more greedy he was, the greater her chances of success would be. So even though she was very tired, she still wore those ignorant eyes as she deeply teased Yi Hongyi's passion. But Zhen isn't tired, what to do? Yi Hongyi's palm stroked the smooth jade flesh on Yarrow Mo Wan's leg, his thin lips biting her captivating red lips. A certain part of his body was unbearably hot. He couldn't imagine how this kind of body as clean as ice and as clean as jade could bring him such an enormous desire, making him unable to stop himself again and again. The fragrance between Yarrow Mo Wan's lips and teeth was a taste he liked, to the extent that his lips lingered for a long time before moving away. His fiery kiss continued downwards, only pausing on her chest for a moment before attacking downwards. A new round of stubborn entanglement began once again. Yi Hongyi impatiently crashed into Yarrow Mo Wan's body, occasionally letting out low beast-like roars. Looking at the infatuated and entangled eyes of the man on top of her, Yarrow Mo Wan lightly moaned a few times in response. So there was no need to deliberately curry favor, he already couldn't bear to part with this body. Yarrow Mo Wan's cherry lips faintly curved, her heart gradually becoming colder. A bolt of lightning streaked past, emitting a blinding white light. Accompanied by the rumbling of thunder, Yi Hongyi once again released the heat of his body. He lay on Yarrow Mo Wan's body in satisfaction and fell into a deep sleep. Yarrow Mo Wan slowly stretched out her lotus arm and raised her eyes to look at the 5 slender jade fingers in front of her. Her nails, which were painted with dark purple rouge, were lustrous and full. Under the contrast of the lightning, they appeared even more scarlet like blood. Her fingertips swiped across Yi Hongyi's back, drawing a circle in the middle of his back. Her lips curved into an unbridled smile. Lightning flashed again and the smile on Yarrow Mo Wan's face suddenly turned into a sinister and terrifying expression. In the main hall of the Su Fu, Yarrow Ting once again reiterated his stance. As long as Do Xianglan no longer disturbed Su Muzi and Yarrow Yu's lives, she would still be the first madam of the Yarrow Fu. Otherwise, for his son, he didn't mind breaking up. Even if Yarrow Sulwan was here, he still persisted. At the side, Su Muzi humbly stood behind Yarrow Ting, trembling as she looked at Do Xianglan's fiendish gaze without saying a word. She knew that she didn't have the qualifications to speak. My daughter, say something. Look at your father, he's already bullying me. Do Xianglan pulled Yarrow Sulwan like a shrew, crying bitterly. It's a happy occasion for father to have a son, but in the end, they're one family. How can we let them live outside? If this gets out, wouldn't it become a joke? So daughter feels that we should have third madam and Yarrow you move back to Yarrow Fu. What does father think? Yarrow Sulwan's sparkling eyes moved like a fairy's as she smiled faintly and walked in front of Yarrow Ting. Her jade fingers swept across Yarrow Yu's delicate face. Daughter, how can you let? Mother, in the end, Yarrow Yu is Yarrow family's blood, his father's son. Could it be that you're going to let him float outside forever, unable to acknowledge his ancestors and return to the clan? Su Muzi is Yarrow Yu's birth mother, she naturally should also follow him back to Yarrow Fu. Seeing that Do Xianglan was unwilling, Yarrow Sulwan immediately turned her eyes, her gaze gradually becoming ruthless. But, all right. It's not a big deal. This consort will take charge of this matter. Right now, His Majesty is still in Yarosongfu. This consort has to hurry back. Yaro Sulwan looked towards Yaro Zhenting meaningfully. The meaning behind her words was that there was already no need to seek his opinion. Chapter 20. Since Your Highness Consort Li has said so, then this servant is not an unreasonable person. Pingji, order the servants to clean up Still Snow Pavilion tomorrow and have the mother and son move there, Do Xianglan said resentfully. At the side, Su Muzi reached out to caress Yaro Yu's face and looked towards Yaro Zhenting timidly. Yaro Zhenting lightly patted the back of Su Muzi's hand to show that he was at ease and didn't refuse. Even if he didn't want Su Muzi and son to move back to the Prime Minister Fu, Yaro Sulwan was still a Guifei. Since she had asked, he couldn't refuse. It was already past 5 in the afternoon and the gloomy sky gradually darkened. However, the torrential rain showed no signs of abating. Niang Niang, the rain is so heavy. Let's wait for the rain to lessen before leaving. At this time, His Majesty should already be asleep, suggested Xia Ying quietly as she looked at the waterfall of rain outside. No. Ben Gong doesn't feel at ease leaving His Majesty alone there. Yaro Sulwan's brows furrowed as she felt a bit anxious. Just as she was about to walk out the door, a bolt of lightning suddenly flashed by. In the blink of an eye, a pine tree in the main courtyard fell to the ground with a crack, smoke still rising from the broken part. Never mind, let's just wait. The scene in front of her forced Yaro Sulwan back to the main hall. However, this wait lasted for an entire night. The next morning, when Yaro Sulwan and the others returned to the Prime Minister Fu, Yaro Tu hurriedly came out to welcome them. Yaro Tu, did His Majesty sleep well last night? Has he woken up yet? Asked Yaro Sulwan solemnly as she walked into the Prime Minister Fu. Replying second young miss, His Majesty has already returned to the palace, said Yaro Tu respectfully as he bowed. When she finished speaking, Yaro Sulwan suddenly shook and immediately turned to look at Yaro Tu. What did you say? Returned to the palace? Then His Majesty is angry. Yaro Sulwan's voice trembled slightly as she looked towards Yaro Tu in annoyance. If she had known earlier, she would have rushed back in the rain. That's not the case, it's just that. Yaro Tu hesitated and instinctively glanced towards Yaro Zhenting. What are you looking at father for? Ben Gong is asking you a question, urged Yaro Sulwan. Replying Niang, His Majesty isn't angry, it's just that when His Majesty left, he took third young miss with him, reported Yaro Tu. What? Yaro Sulwan looked towards Yaro Tu in disbelief. At the side, Do Xianglan pushed aside the equally shocked Yaro Zhenting and strode over to Yaro Tu, grabbing his collar. Why does the Emperor want to take that fool away? Hurry up and say it. Just as Do Xianglan was interrogating Yaro Tu, the sound of horse hooves suddenly came from outside the door. Majestic imperial guards sat on green and date red horses. The one leading them was Yi Hongyi's favorite, and Bingshan. The imperial edict has arrived. Yaro Zhenting, receive the edict. And Bingshan held the jade scroll and golden scroll in one hand. He dismounted from his horse and strode into Yaro Manor. After he stopped, he opened the imperial edict with both hands. Yaro Zhenting and the others knelt on the ground in unison when they heard this and lowered their heads to listen. In accordance with the will of the heavens, the Emperor has decreed that Consort Li, Yaro Sulwan, is dignified and elegant, intelligent, and has served in the palace for a long time. She will be conferred the title of Imperial Gui Fei. On the ground, the jubilant Yaro Sulwan's face darkened when she heard the 3 words Imperial Gui Fei. His Majesty had hinted that he would confer her the title of Empress. How did she become Imperial Gui Fei? And why was father the one to receive the edict? When Yaro Zhenting heard this, his heart sank. Just as he was about to get up to receive the edict, and Bingshan stopped him. Chapter 21. Congratulations Imperial Gui Fei, congratulations Prime Minister Yaro. Zijia shamelessly asks Prime Minister for a reward. This is a joyous occasion, Zijia can also bask in some happiness, and Bingshan looked towards Yaro Zhenting with a smile. Of course. Yarrow Junting suppressed the shock in his heart and glanced at Yarrow 2. Yarrow 2 understood tacitly and respectfully handed the 100 taels banknote that he usually kept in his sleeve to Bingshan. As expected of Prime Minister, you're generous. Then Zijia will take his leave. Bingshan glanced at the number on the banknote and then left with a smile. The second Bingshan left Prime Minister Yarrow Fu, Yarrow Sulwan immediately snatched the imperial edict and read it carefully. As expected, there was an edict conferring Yarrow Moan the title of Yarrow Fei. How could His Majesty confer that idiot the title of consort? What exactly is going on? Do Xianglan hurriedly walked to Yarrow Sulwan's side and exclaimed, Yarrow 2. What exactly happened last night? His Majesty wouldn't confer the title of that idiot for no reason. Yarrow Sulwan glared fiercely at Yarrow 2. This old servant really didn't know. Yarrow 2 put on an innocent expression and looked towards Yarrow Sulwan. Cai Ying. Prepare to return to the palace. Yarrow Sulwan abruptly threw the imperial edict to the ground and charged out of the Fu with hostility. Do Xianglan looked towards Yarrow Junting in confusion when she saw Yarrow Sulwan leave angrily. Laoi, what does that mean? It means that I, Yarrow Junting, have more than just Yarrow Sulwan as my daughter. Humph. Yarrow Junting glared at Do Xianglan and walked into the main hall with large strides, leaving Do Xianglan standing there in shock. There was a faint earthy fragrance in the air after the rain. Yarrow Moan raised her eyes to look at the 3 large words Guan Osprey Palace in front of her. The corners of her lips curved faintly. The rising sun gently shone on her devastatingly beautiful face, gilding it with a layer of light. She was as beautiful as a fairy from a painting. Guan Osprey, in the continents of the river, graceful and virtuous women are sought after by gentlemen. Third Miss, His Majesty seems to like you very much. Ting Yu looked at Guan Osprey Palace and said emotionally, In the future, just call me Empress. This is the Imperial Palace, don't break the rules here. Yarrow Moan said indifferently. Her face was filled with exhaustion that was difficult to conceal. After a night of torment, there were finally results. It was just that she did not expect the results to come so quickly and so suddenly. When Yi Hongyi said he wanted to bring her into the palace, she didn't even know what kind of expression to use to respond to him. In the end, she tiptoed and kissed Yi Hongyi's thin lips, then nodded dumbly. Ting Yu obeys. When she saw Yarrow Moan enter Guan Osprey Palace, Ting Yu happily followed her in. Although Guan Osprey Palace's decorations weren't as luxurious as Changle Palace's, it didn't lose its elegance and splendor. Even though Ting Yu had seen quite a few precious treasures in the Prime Minister's estate, she was still dazzled. Ting Yu, do you still remember that hamster we saw when we were passing through the Imperial Garden earlier? Yarrow Mo Wn lazily leaned against the chaise lounge covered with snowfox fur, her beautiful eyes slightly closed. I remember. I wonder who raised this hamster. Why did they hang it in the pavilion? Ting Yu withdrew her gaze and jogged over to Yarrow Moan's side. Chapter 22. The sound of footsteps gradually faded away. Yarrow Moan slowly opened her eyes and looked in the direction Ting Yu had disappeared in. The Imperial Palace had always been a ruthless place. If she wanted to have a foothold here, relying on the Emperor's favor alone was not enough. She also needed a capable helper. Although what she asked Ting Yu to do was a small matter, she might be able to see the bigger picture from a small clue, and then she could determine whether Ting Yu would be like a fish in water among these palace maids and eunuchs in the future. Perhaps it was because she was really tired that Yarrow Moan actually fell asleep while thinking. She only woke up when Ting Yu covered her with a robe. How long have you been back? Seeing that it was Ting Yu, Yarrow Moan let out a sigh of relief, then got up and walked to the table. She poured a cup of tea and drank it by herself. I just came in and saw that your highness was asleep, so I didn't dare to disturb you. Ting Yu replied cautiously. Back at Yarrow Xiongfu, she had never known that her family's third young miss had such an imposing aura. At this moment, even though Yarrow Moan's expression was calm, she still felt a bit nervous. How did the investigation go? Yarrow Moan held the teacup with one hand, her fingers pinching the lid as she brushed away the tea leaves floating on top. Replying, Your Highness, when this servant arrived at the Imperial Garden, This servant saw an imperial physician continuously pricking the hamster with silver needles while counting. This servant didn't dare to disturb him and only dared to approach after he had pricked the hamster 50 times and put away the silver needles. That imperial physician was very tight-lipped and this servant did not get anything out of him. Instead, it was a palace maid that came later. This servant used silver and found out from her mouth that the hamster was eldest young miss. It was the pet that the empress raised when she was alive. After the empress passed away, it was raised by His Majesty. According to His Majesty's wishes, when the hamster contracted a nasty disease, not only did it have to be hung in the pavilion for ventilation, it also had to be pierced with silver needles 50 times a day before it could survive. Ting Yu reported all the information that she had heard. The sound of a teacup shattering suddenly rang out. Yarrow Moen sat quietly at the table, the light in her eyes indistinguishable. His heart, however, had turned into a sea of flames. Yi Hongi, even if it's just a hamster, you won't let it go. Empress, are you all right? Ting Yu knew that Yarrow Moen's heart ached for the hamster, so she called out worriedly. Before Yarrow Moen could say anything, Yarrow Sulwan had already stepped into Guan Osprey Palace. Yarrow Mo Wan, get out here right now. How did you, a lowly bastard born of a concubine, seduce His Majesty? Seeing Yarrow Sulwan charge in like a ferocious tiger, Ting Yu immediately blocked in front of Yarrow Sulwan. Second, miss. What are you doing? Before Ting Yu could finish speaking, a buzzing sound suddenly rang in her ears, followed by a scorching pain. Ting Yu immediately felt the world spinning. Who do you think you are? How dare you block this consort's path? Get lost. Yarrow Sulwan's eyes glowed green like a wild beast's. Just as Yarrow Sulwan was about to attack again, Yarrow Moen leisurely got up and walked to Ting Yu's side. Ting Yu, Wan is so bored. Can you help Wan buy a cat to play with? Yarrow Mo Wan pulled Ting Yu with both hands in a spoiled manner. Her innocent appearance caused Ting Yu to be startled. Niang Niang. Ting Yu looked towards Yarrow Moen in confusion. The current Yarrow Moen was just as naive and a little silly as before. Go buy a cat for Wanna. If you can't find one, you can ask Liu Xing to go with you. I have second older sister to accompany me. Nothing will happen. Yarrow Moen smiled as she pushed Ting Yu out of Guan Osprey Palace. Although Ting Yu didn't understand, she knew that Master was intentionally sending her away. Chapter 23. Second older sister, you look so scary. Yarrow Mo Wan blinked her clear eyes and pinched the corners of her clothes as she looked towards Yarrow Sulwan in fear. Call me Imperial Noble Consort. Do you think this is Prime Minister Yarrow's residence? Quick, tell me, what happened yesterday? Looking at this Yarrow Moen who only had the IQ of a 7 or 8-year-old, Yarrow Sulwan couldn't figure out what kind of ability she had. Last night. Let Moen think about it. Oh, Moen remembers now. It was father who said second older sister wasn't free, so he told Moen to go play with His Majesty. Second older sister, does His Majesty usually play with you like this? On Yarrow Mo Wan's plain and clean face, her eyes were sparkling and pure, like a fairy who had not been tainted by the mundane world. A casual glance was enough to captivate one's soul. That face was the object of desire of all men, and it could also attract the jealous gazes of all women. How to play? Yarrow Sulwan's brows tightly knit as she looked towards Yarrow Mo Wan suspiciously. It means taking off your clothes and kissing. His Majesty really has a lot of stamina. After kissing Moen for an entire night, Moen is still very tired. Also, that place still hurts a lot. Yarrow Moen shyly moved closer to Yarrow Sulwan's ear and whispered softly. Preposterous. Go away. Flames of jealousy shot to her head. Yarrow Sulwan pushed Yarrow Moen away in disgust, the veins on her forehead bulging. At the side, when Cai Ying heard this, her cheeks couldn't help but flush red. She stole a glance at Yarrow Mo Wan. Aside from being silly, the woman in front of her really did have the capital to surpass her master and the late empress, Cai Ying thought. Second sister, you're so fierce. The emperor doesn't like fierce women. His Majesty said that he likes gentle women like Moen. Yarrow Moen staggered and almost fell. After she steadied herself, she looked towards Yarrow Sulwan in a huff. Bah! That's not gentleness, it's stupidity. You're an idiot. Yarrow Sulwan cursed. But His Majesty says that he likes idiots. Yarrow Moen retorted as she looked towards Yarrow Sulwan with reddened eyes. You. Ahem. Just now, you said that it was father who asked you to look for His Majesty last night. Yarrow Sulwan suddenly realized that she was actually arguing with an idiot. It really did lower her status as an imperial Gui Fei, so she lightly coughed twice and calmly looked towards Yarrow Moen. That's right. Before His Majesty arrived, father told Moen that second older sister didn't have time to accompany His Majesty. Perhaps father thought that second older sister had to keep watch for eldest sister, so she didn't have time to accompany His Majesty. Humph. You want this consort to keep a vigil for that slut? She's not worthy. Father really is worthy of being the Prime Minister. Yarrow Sulwan gritted her teeth and muttered, a faint chill bursting out from the bottom of her eyes. No wonder mother didn't discover earlier or later and just had to discover Su Muzi and Yarrow Yu's existence when His Majesty arrived at Yarrow Xiongfu. So all of this was arranged by father. My darn father you couldn't possibly have thought that this fool would be able to turn the tables for the Yarrow family, right? Sulwan will prove to you that I, Yarrow Sulwan, am the only one who can shoulder the honor of the Yarrow family. Just as Yarrow Sulwan sank into contemplation, her body suddenly staggered backwards. If Cai Ying hadn't supported her, she would have definitely fallen to the ground. Yarrow Moen, you're crazy. Why did you push me? Yarrow Sulwan looked at the fuming Yarrow Moen and roared hatefully. Why is second older sister saying bad things about eldest sister? Although Moen doesn't understand much, she also knows that sisterhood is deep. Eldest sister treats us so well, so of course she's worthy of you keeping watch for her. But second older sister, your mouth is so smelly. Yarrow Moen glared at Yarrow Sulwan as she muttered. Chapter 24. However, before Yarrow Sulwan could walk out of Guan Osprey Palace, she heard An Bingshan's shrill voice. His Majesty has arrived. Yarrow Sulwan trembled when she heard this and immediately turned back to Yarrow Moen's side. Not caring whether Yarrow Moen was willing or not, she suddenly pulled Yarrow Moen's hand affectionately. Moen, this is your first time in the Imperial Palace. If there's anything you don't understand in the future, feel free to come to Qing Palace to find second older sister. If anyone dares to bully you, second older sister will definitely help you. The speed at which Yarrow Sulwan's expression changed really made Yarrow Moen gasp in amazement. At that time, it was this pure and sincere smiling face that had blinded her eyes, making her feel like she was raising a wolf by her side, protecting it, caring for it. So, if a person didn't live again, they wouldn't know how cheap they were. Then second older sister knows her wrongs. Yarrow Moen lifted her brows as she looked towards Yarrow Sulwan. Yarrow Sulwan originally wanted to get angry, but when she saw Yi Hongyi walk through the palace doors, she nodded firmly. This is Moen's good second older sister. Yarrow Moen held Yarrow Sulwan's hands, her eyes narrowing into crescent moons. What are you smiling so happily about? Yi Hongyi still didn't dare believe that he was so attached to Yarrow Moen's body. Just now, in the throne room, his mind was still filled with the scene of him and Yarrow Moen lingering for a night. Especially that plain and elegant face, which was flawless and white. Perhaps it was because Yarrow Moen's temperament was something he, Yi Hongyi, yearned for but couldn't get, so from the moment he saw Yarrow Moen, he decided to keep this woman in his domain until he got tired of it. This concubine kowtows in salute to your majesty. When Yi Hongyi walked in, Yarrow Sulwan immediately folded her hands at her waist and bowed in greeting. Yarrow Moen stood at the side, not showing any intention of greeting him. Moen, when you see His Majesty, you have to salute like second older sister. Hurry. Yarrow Sulwan pretended to be anxious as she urged. In reality, she wanted nothing more than for Yarrow Moen to offend the emperor and end up like Yarrow Morshin. Oh. Yarrow Moen nodded firmly and then copied Yarrow Sulwan. However, the moment she bowed, her entire body fell. Just as she expected, Yi Hongyi's large hand moved to support her waist. His face was filled with an indescribable gentleness. If it wasn't for that kind of painful experience, perhaps Yarrow Moen would be like other women and feel overwhelmed by the favor. But now, she only felt disgusted. Moen, how could you? How could you be so careless? When Yarrow Sulwan saw Yi Hongyi's expression, she swallowed back the word stupid she was about to say. Forget it. Since Yarrow Fei can't learn it, then there's no need to learn it. Yi Hongyi gently helped Yarrow Moen up, but his hands were reluctant to move away from Yarrow Moen's slender waist, his body faintly starting to heat up. Your Majesty, how could that do? This is the Imperial Palace. Yi Hongyi waved his hand to cut off Yarrow Sulwan's words, then looked at Yarrow Mo Wn dotingly. Your Majesty, the esteemed prince is still waiting outside. And Bingshan found an opening and reminded him in a low voice. Cough cough. Summon the esteemed prince in. Yi Hongyi coughed lightly, then let go of Yarrow Moen's slender waist. However, he unwillingly pulled her tender little hand and walked to the main seat. At the side, Yarrow Sulwan suddenly felt like she had turned into air. Ever since Yi Hongyi walked in, he hadn't even looked at her once. He was still dressed in white, the color of the snow contrasting with Yi Juanqing's scholarly elegance. He was like the morning moon and clear clouds as he walked through the drifting snow. Not a single strand of his black hair was out of place, flowing down to his waist. His handsome features seemed to contain all the thoughts of the heavens. Under his sharp brows, those eyes were like the cold river under the moonlight, so cold that it made one shiver. Even so, that face still had an irresistible charm that made one unwittingly intoxicated and unable to free themselves. Yarrow Moen suddenly recalled something. She remembered that Yi Juanqing's favorite color was azure blue, but what he hated the most was white, the same color as the flag. At the time, he had explained that in his eyes, white represented death. But now, he was wearing white, so what did it mean? Chapter 25. Normally, Yi Juanqing should have been bedridden a long time ago after drinking more than 10 jugs of imperial wine, yet he was able to stand in front of him unscathed. Presumably, he had already discovered something was wrong with the wine. In order to prevent Yi Juanqing from playing any more tricks, Yi Hongyi decided to just imprison him in the imperial palace. Under his eyes, Yi Juanqing wouldn't be able to do anything. Juanqing obeys. Yi Juanqing didn't resist, didn't refuse, didn't even say much. He spoke indifferently. To him, it was the same no matter where he was. Without Yarrow Morshin, there was only black and white. Ian, it's just that there aren't any empty palaces in the Imperial Palace right now, so you can stay in the east wing of Guan Osprey Palace for now. As for meals, you can eat with Consort Yarrow. Yarrow Moen was instantly stunned by Yi Hongyi's words. She instantly understood what Yi Hongyi was thinking. He put Yi Juanqing under house arrest in the Imperial Palace. The advantage was that he could guard against Yi Juanqing at all times. The disadvantage was that in order to prove his innocence, he couldn't easily take Yi Juanqing's life. However, he wasn't willing to block his own path, so he arranged for Yi Juanqing to be placed in the palace of an idiotic concubine. Once he couldn't tolerate Yi Juanqing anymore, he would find an excuse to execute him for seducing Consort Yao. After all, a concubine with low intelligence wouldn't know how to seduce a man. Yarrow Moen suddenly really wanted to laugh. This was Yi Hongyi, selfish to the point where there was nowhere to hide. At this moment, no matter how much he spoiled her, in his bones, she was still nothing more than a toy that he was currently playing with. As long as he needed to, he could throw her to death at any time, just like throwing away a piece of clothing. Your Majesty, this isn't appropriate, right? At the side, Yarrow Sulwan was shocked and jealous to death. Seeing that Yarrow Moen had obtained the imperial favor and could now stand side by side with great choose number 1 handsome man, Yi Juanqing, she really didn't know how many lifetimes of good fortune she had accumulated for such a good thing. Yarrow Sulwan was just short of shouting that she was an idiot. Could it be that Imperial Gui Fei has a better idea than Zhen? Yi Hongyi narrowed his eyes as he looked towards Yarrow Sulwan, his voice slightly cold. Yarrow Sulwan choked upon hearing this and didn't say anything else. Let the esteemed prince live with you and accompany you to eat, all right? Yi Hongyi glanced coldly at Yarrow Sulwan, then turned to look at Yarrow Moen. His fingers couldn't help but brush across Yarrow Moen's dainty cheek. Yarrow Moen's stupidity was the same as Yarrow Morshin's wisdom. Everyone in the world knew about it, so there was no need for him to doubt it. Did the emperor ask him to serve Wan? Great. But Wan doesn't want to live with him, the bed is so small. Wan only wants to live with your majesty. Yarrow Mo Wn blinked her eyes and nodded firmly. Haha. My little fool. Good. We will now take you to see just how small the beds in Guan Osprey Palace are. All of you are dismissed. Yi Hongyi's burning gaze landed on Yarrow Mo Wan's snow-white jade neck without the slightest hesitation. With a wave of his large hand, he abruptly carried Yarrow Mo Wn horizontally and, under everyone's astonished gazes, walked into the bedroom. Your Majesty. Yarrow Sulwan's eyes were filled with hidden bitterness, but she could only watch as Yi Hongyi carried a fool to have fun, leaving her, this newly promoted imperial Gui Fei, to be left hanging. Esteemed prince, the east wing has already been tidied up. If you're tired, you can go rest. And Bingshan walked to Yi Juanqing's side with a fake smile and bowed respectfully. Yi Juanqing was speechless. When he turned around coldly, his eyes swept over the bedroom. This wasn't the first time he had heard about Yarrow Moen from Yarrow Morshin. He didn't doubt Yarrow Moen's stupidity, but he really wanted to know who that Jing Xin who had once ground ink for him was. In this world, could there be two people who looked exactly the same? Chapter 26. Thinking up to here, Yarrow Mo Wn let out a light sigh and dragged her exhausted body off the bed. Looking at the clothes that Yi Hongyi had torn to shreds, she couldn't help but snort coldly. Shortly after, she went to the wardrobe and chose a brightly colored palace robe to wear. Then, she simply fixed her hair before walking out of the inner room. Yarrow Mo Wn had just sat down when she saw Tingyu walk in with a snow-white cat in her arms. Niang Niang, this is the cat you wanted. Tingyu carried the cat with both hands and walked to Yarrow Mo Wan's side with her head lowered. Raise your head. Yarrow Mo Wan's gaze moved from the cat to Tingyu's face. Her eyes trembled slightly. You cried. It would have been better if Yarrow Mo Wan hadn't asked. Now that she did, Tingyu couldn't help but sob. Her tears fell onto the cat, causing it to fidget restlessly in Tingyu's arms. What happened? Yarrow Mo Wn looked towards Tingyu with a serious expression. After interacting with Tingyu for this period of time, she understood that Tingyu wasn't someone who would casually show her emotions. Niang Niang. Liu Xing. Liu Xing is outside the palace, waiting for Niang Niang to summon him. Tingyu choked with sobs as she spoke. Her hands tightly caressed the cat in her arms, afraid that it would run out. Liu Xing also came. Why didn't you bring him in? Quickly call him in. Yarrow Mo Wn temporarily suppressed the suspicions in her heart and ordered indifferently. Hearing this, Tingyu silently walked out of the palace doors. When she saw Liu Xing appear in front of her wearing the red collar and black gown of a eunuch, Yarrow Mo Wn finally understood why Tingyu had cried. Even she was so angry that her eyes were brimming with tears. Liu Xing kowtows in salute. Consort Yarrow Niang Niang. Liu Xing stood awkwardly at the door, not daring to look directly at Yarrow Mo Wan. Liu Xing, what did you do? Who told you to do this? Yarrow Mo Wn walked in front of Liu Xing with large strides and forced back her tears. Her lips trembled as she scolded him. Liu Xing was willing. Liu Xing only wanted to protect young Miss and not allow anyone to bully young Miss. Sorry. Liu Xing didn't mean to make young Miss angry. Liu Xing humbly buried his head in his chest and clasped his hands together. He was like a child who had done something wrong, not daring to raise his head. You're so stupid. They all say Ben Gong is stupid, but the stupidest person is you. The one who should apologize is this empress. Not you. Raise your head. Yarrow Mo Wn stubbornly believed that after her rebirth, she would be able to endure everything and remain calm. But at this moment, she still couldn't help shedding tears. She didn't have the face to face Liu Xing and was even more unable to tell him that the person he used his life to protect had already passed away. The Yarrow Moen who was standing in front of him right now didn't need anyone's protection. Her strong heart was enough to destroy this imperial palace. Liu Xing slowly raised his head, still not daring to look directly at Yarrow Moan. It wasn't until Yarrow Moan's hands touched his shoulders that he was forced to look at the woman he could only dream of all his life. Chapter 27. Since it's already happened, we have to look forward. There's no need to cling to the past. However, from now on, you have to let Ben Gong know everything you do. Yarrow Moan put away the sorrow in her eyes and looked towards Liu Xing solemnly. Her rebirth was not for her to weep and weep, nor to grieve over the changing seasons. Liu Xing will remember. Liu Xing nodded firmly with a resolute smile on his face. At breakfast, Yarrow Moan ordered Tingyu to prepare an extra pair of chopsticks. However, even after she finished eating, Enchanting still hadn't appeared. "Your Highness, should this servant go to the east wing to call the esteemed prince?" asked Tingyu as she walked over to Yarrow Moan. "Let him be. Bring Fluffy over for Ben Gong," Yarrow Moan said carelessly before getting up to take the kitten from Liu Xing's hands. Fluffy was the name Yarrow Moan had given this kitten. It didn't have any special meaning because with her IQ, this cat's name could only be this childish. "Your Highness, you're going out?" When Tingyu and Liu Xing saw that Yarrow Moan was walking towards the palace doors with the kitten, Tingyu and Liu Xing hurriedly followed. "You guys stay here and tidy up. Ben Gong wants to walk around alone." Yarrow Moan stopped Tingyu and Liu Xing before leaving Guan Osprey Palace with Fluffy in her arms. As she stepped on the cobblestone path, Yarrow Moan felt a bone-chilling coldness in her heart. This was a path she had walked on hundreds and thousands of times. Stepping on it now gave her a different kind of desolation. When Yarrow Moan arrived at the pavilion in the Imperial Garden, she unexpectedly saw a familiar figure. His clothes were whiter than snow and his black hair fluttered in the wind. Enchanting was currently holding a fence made of bronze in his hands as he stared at the hamster inside. "Morshine, you're truly cruel. How could you leave without a word? How could you just abandon it like this? Abandon me?" Enchanting gently stroked the hamster in the fence as his eyes sparkled. Her heart was in great pain, as if it was trapped in the middle of thorny vines. Every time it jumped, it would be pricked until it bled profusely. Yarrow Moan subconsciously tightened her grip on Fluffy, causing Fluffy to cry out in discomfort. "Who is it?" Enchanting abruptly lifted his eyes and his sharp gaze shot towards Yarrow Moan who was standing in the corner. "It's me. You like this hamster too?" "I like it too." Yarrow Moan knew that she wouldn't be able to avoid it, so she simply stepped forward and lifted her delicate face to look towards Enchanting with a smile. "You were following me?" Enchanting frowned slightly. He couldn't tell if this woman was Yarrow Moan. It was still the same Jing Xin he saw that day. "Why would I follow you? You can look at the hamster, but I can't. You really are a strange person." When Yarrow Moan tried to step forward again, she was stopped by Enchanting. "Go away. It doesn't like the beast in your arms." Enchanting carefully held the bronze fence in his arms as he looked towards Yarrow Moan, or rather, the cat in Yarrow Moan's arms. "I also don't like it when you call it a beast. It has a name, it's called Fluffy." Yarrow Moan pouted as she mumbled. Her smooth fingers continuously soothed the restless white cat in her arms. "Are you for real?" Enchanting couldn't help but ask as he looked at Yarrow Moan's innocent appearance. She seemed like a completely different person compared to when she had been meditating that day. Before Yarrow Moan could reply, Yarrow Sulwan suddenly exclaimed in surprise. "Moan, so you were together with the esteemed prince? His Majesty had been looking for you guys for a long time." By Yi Hongyi's side, Yarrow Sulwan deliberately emphasized the words together, unable to conceal the schadenfreude on her face. Chapter 28. This hamster is pitiful, so I want to bring it back to raise. Would your Majesty agree to this subject's request? Enchanting looked up to meet Yi Hongyi's cold gaze. The light in his eyes caused Yi Hongyi's aura to subside. At the side, Yarrow Moan was inwardly distressed. Only a person who didn't care about death would act so fearlessly in front of the ruler of a country. Her own death actually made Yi Junqing so reckless. Esteemed prince, I'm afraid you've misunderstood. This hamster is a relic of the deceased empress. His Majesty is currently raising it personally. It's very precious. If it wasn't for the fact that it had a nasty disease, Your Majesty wouldn't bear to hang it here. Yarrow Sulwan tried to beat around the bush, wanting Yi Junqing to back off and not anger the emperor. Although she hated Yarrow Morshin, she had her own selfish intentions towards Yi Junqing. Which woman wouldn't want to get close to a direct immortal like this? Just as Yi Junqing was about to persist, Yarrow Moan suddenly lifted her head to look towards Yi Hongyi. Your Majesty, this is raised by eldest sister, asked Yarrow Moan. Yes, what? You like it? Yi Hongyi smiled lightly, but a trace of coldness flashed through his heart as he looked towards Yarrow Moan. Then can Your Majesty have second older sister bring that hamster over? Yarrow Moan rubbed her head against Yi Hongyi's chest coquettishly, her eyes as clear as water. Why not? Sulwan, since WNO wants it, go bring it over. Yi Hongyi turned to look towards Yarrow Sulwan, his gaze filled with authority that couldn't be refused. Yarrow Sulwan's face turned green and her body stiffened. In the end, she was still an imperial noble consort. That idiot actually dared to order her around. She really had eaten a leopard's gall. Unfortunately, His Majesty had spoken for her. No matter how unwilling Yarrow Sulwan was, she could only obediently walk in front of Yi Junqing. Esteemed prince, you heard it. Consort Yarrow likes this hamster. Yarrow Sulwan forced herself to speak and unwillingly lifted the fence. Second older sister, Wana doesn't want a fence, she only wants the hamster. Yarrow Moan reminded with a smile. When Yarrow Sulwan heard this, she gritted her teeth and forced herself to squeeze out a smile. Before Yi Junqing could react, she opened the fence, picked up the hamster, and turned to walk back to Yarrow Moan. Yi Junqing also wanted to know what Yarrow Moan was planning, so he didn't stop her. However, he regretted it the next second. Just as Yarrow Sulwan held the hamster and walked in front of Yarrow Moan suddenly threw Fluffy towards Yarrow Sulwan. A cat catching a mouse was a matter of course. When Fluffy saw the hamster, she immediately opened her mouth wide and bit down on the hamster's neck. Her two front claws left 10 long bloody marks on Yarrow Sulwan's hand. Ah, it hurts. Yarrow Moan, you idiot, what are you doing? The pain on her hand caused Yarrow Sulwan to cry out loudly. She glared fiercely at Yarrow Moan. If Yi Hongyi wasn't here, she definitely would have skinned this idiot alive. Imperial noble consort, watch your words. Yi Hongyi coldly looked towards Yarrow Sulwan, who had lost her composure, and casually pulled Yarrow Moan into his embrace. Your Majesty, she. Yarrow Sulwan clutched her injured hand in pain, but when she met Yi Hongyi's gaze, she hoarsely retreated to the side. Chapter 29. Wana, what are you doing? That's the Empress's favorite hamster. Your Majesty. Did Wana do something wrong? Why are they so angry? Eldest sister is very lonely down there. Since that hamster was raised by eldest sister, Wana just wanted to send it to accompany eldest sister. Yarrow Moan said this as tears fell down her face. She shrunk even closer to Yi Hongyi. She didn't need to tell anyone that her tears were for that hamster. Rather than being tormented by Yi Hongyi every day, she would rather die. Then why did you encourage that animal to scratch Ben Gong? At the side, Yarrow Sulwan hated Yarrow Moan's silly expression and questioned her angrily. Why wasn't second older sister more careful? Does it hurt? Yarrow Moan seemed to have just noticed the claw marks on Yarrow Sulwan's hand. What do you think? Bye. Your Majesty, this subject's concubine's injury will require Imperial Physician Xian to take a look. This subject's concubine will be leaving first. Seeing Yi Hongyi nod, Yarrow Sulwan immediately turned around and cursed him for being an idiot countless times in her heart. The sun was bright and the flowers were fragrant. Fluffy sat on the grass in satisfaction and licked her paws, completely unaware of the danger around her. You're not allowed to bully Fluffy. When Yarrow Moan saw Yi Junqing walking towards Fluffy ruthlessly, She suddenly rushed over and pulled Fluffy, who was still savoring the taste, into her arms. She stared at Yi Junqing with bright eyes. Junqing, Wanna's words aren't without reason. Rather than have that hamster yearn for Master day and night, it's better to send it to reunite with Master. That way, the pain of lovesickness can be resolved. Yi Hongyi walked in front of Yarrow Mo Wan and looked towards Yi Junqing meaningfully. This subject's younger brother isn't feeling well, I'll be taking my leave. Yi Junqing suppressed the anger in his heart and left the imperial garden. Yi Hongyi stared at Yi Junqing's back for a long time before turning to look at Yarrow Mo Wan. Wanna, Telzhen, why did you suddenly want to raise a cat? Yi Hongyi stroked Fluffy in Yarrow Mo Wan's arms as his eyes glowed with an indistinguishable light. Wanna tricked them. Wanna doesn't like eldest sister, and I don't like eldest sister's hamster either, so Wanna purposely had Fluffy eat that hamster. Wanna is very bad, right? His Majesty won't like WNR anymore. Yarrow Moan puffed up her cheeks, not concealing her emotions at all. Haha. How could this be? I like Wanna the most. Let me tell you a secret, Zhen also doesn't like that hamster. Yi Hongyi pulled Yarrow Mo Wan over and gently tapped her head in a doting manner. At this moment, he truly believed that Yarrow Moan was an idiot, but he just liked idiot. The Emperor likes Wan'er. The Emperor is the best. Yarrow Moan raised her eyes to look towards Yi Hongyi and smiled heartlessly. However, the hands hidden under Fluffy's body were clenched into fists, causing her nails to dig into her flesh. After Yi Hongyi sent Yarrow Moan back to Guan Osprey Palace, he returned to the imperial study. When it was time for lunch, Tingyu and Liu Xing had already prepared the meal. There were still 2 pairs of bowls and chopsticks on the table. Niang Niang, should this servant go call the esteemed prince? Asked Tingyu in a low voice. There's no need. Liu Xing, bring Fluffy over. Since the esteemed prince isn't hungry, let Fluffy have this seat in the future. Yarrow Moan glanced at the door expressionlessly and deliberately raised her voice. Yes. Just as Liu Xing walked over with Fluffy in his arms, Yi Junqing suddenly stormed through the door and took large strides to sit down at the table. This is Ben Wang's place, how dare you let an animal sit here? Yi Junqing looked towards Yarrow Moan hatefully, then glared at Fluffy in Liu Xing's arms. Yarrow Moan didn't say anything and only focused on eating. However, a trace of warmth rose in her heart. People had to eat, otherwise how could they continue living? Liu Xing naturally understood Master's provocation earlier. When he realized that Yi Junqing's extremely unfriendly gaze made it seem like he wanted to eat Fluffy alive, he very tactfully carried Fluffy out of the main hall. At the side, Tingyu was carefully serving Yi Junqing's food. Ben Wang is talking to you. Yi Junqing didn't want to bicker with an idiot, especially since this idiot was Mo Xin's younger sister. However, he was still angry. That was the only thing Mo Xin had left behind. How could she be so cruel? She looked innocent on the surface, but who knew how black her heart was? Chapter 30. Tingyu, put away the table. Tingyu looked towards Yi Junqing awkwardly. This prince hasn't eaten yet. Yi Junqing slapped the table angrily. Yarrow Moan ignored him and walked into the bedroom. What kind of attitude is this? According to the laws of this dynasty, aside from the Empress and Imperial Gui Fei, all concubines in the inner palace have to salute when they see prince. This is etiquette. Yi Junqing's table clattered loudly. Prince. If you don't eat, this servant will have to put away the table. Reminded Tingyu. Yi Junqing was shocked and then sighed. He picked up his bowl and chopsticks and looked at the food in front of him. What was wrong with him? He knew that he wasn't an impetuous person. Ever since Mo Xin passed away, he didn't know who else in this world could affect him. But now, he was actually angry at an idiot. Perhaps it was because of Mo Xin's hamster. Yes, it had to be. Only after Yi Junqing thought it through did he eat in peace. He really was hungry. When Tingyu pushed open the door and walked into the bedroom, Yarrow Moan was leaning against the window and silently gazing at Changle Palace. That was the place where she, Zhong'er, was born. Your Highness, the esteemed prince has left. Ting Yu placed the fruit on the table and walked to Yarrow Moen's side. Time to eat. Yarrow Moen withdrew her gaze and restrained the deep sorrow in her eyes. Your Highness, there's something this servant doesn't understand. Why does your Highness pretend to be an idiot in front of everyone but not the esteemed prince? Ting Yu had thought about this question for a long time but couldn't figure it out. Did you forget? Before entering the palace, this consort had once gone to Su Wang residence. This consort has a deep impression of this consort. Furthermore, His Majesty has already arranged for Yi Junqing to live in Guan Osprey Palace. Even if this consort wanted to hide it, it wouldn't last long. Rather than dealing with him and being afraid, it's better to let him know. There's nothing wrong with that. Yarrow Moen slowly walked back to the table. The lychees on the fruit plate were once her favorite thing, but now that she bit them, she didn't feel anything. Her heart was bitter and nothing she ate could change this fact. Your Highness, aren't you afraid that the esteemed prince will expose your Highness to His Majesty? Asked Ting Yu worriedly as she handed the lychees to Yarrow Moen. The only thing I'm not worried about is this matter. Don't worry, if I don't have enough confidence, I won't take the risk. Have you identified the concubines in the inner palace these past 2 days? Yarrow Moen changed the topic and looked towards Ting Yu seriously. Goddess, feel free to ask. Ting Yu was full of confidence. Accompany Ben Gong for a walk. Yarrow Moen pursed her lips into a faint smile. She got up and placed her jade fingers on Ting Yu's hand, then walked out of Guan Osprey Palace. Now that he was back in the palace, it was time to meet some people. The imperial garden of the Great Chu was much larger than Ting Yu had imagined. At that time, the hamster pavilion was only the most inconspicuous corner of the imperial garden. At this moment, as Ting Yu stood on the white jade stone bridge in the middle of the imperial garden and gazed at the sparkling blue lake below the bridge, she couldn't help but be astonished. Empress, this is much bigger than the pond in Xiongfu. Ting Yu sighed with emotion. Ting Yu, do you see that concubine who's feeding the fish in the pavilion over there? Tell me, who is she? Following Yarrow Moen's finger, Ting Yu clearly saw that on the pavilion built over the lake, a woman was currently sprinkling the fish feed in her hands into the blue lake, causing the koi fish in the lake to gather under the pavilion. When they jumped up and down, countless droplets of water splashed up, looking exceptionally sparkling under the sunlight. The woman was wearing a dark purple dress with rich peonies embroidered on the folds of the dress. A green silk belt was tied around her waist and a white muslin jacket was draped over her shoulders. Her fine black hair was tied into a complicated flying bun and she wore a moon hairpin, jadeite, blood pearls, and other valuable accessories. She clearly had an extraordinary status. Chapter 31. Not only is it correct, it's very accurate. Yarrow Moen nodded in satisfaction and walked down the arch bridge towards the pavilion. Ting Yu was naturally happy to be praised and followed behind Yarrow Moen. However, in the next second, she suddenly felt that something was wrong. She had spent a lot of effort to find out this information. Master hadn't interacted with anyone since entering the palace, so how would she know if what she said was correct? Ting Yu was just thinking about it when she saw that Yarrow Moen had already walked far away. She didn't think too much and quickened her pace to catch up. Ben Gong is going to be angered to death. Yarrow Moen died and now there's Yarrow Moen. I heard that she's even an idiot. Recently, His Majesty's taste has changed too much. What fun can he have with an idiot? Could it be that he's going to lie on the bed with that idiot and count? Yarrow Moen had just gotten close to the pavilion when she heard Huan Kia cursing. Niang Niang. Sure, Ting Yu was just about to step forward to reason but was stopped by Yarrow Moen. She could only remain silent. Master, don't be angry. It's just an idiot, it can't threaten Master's position in the palace. However, we have to remind Master to be on guard against that old fox, Yarrow Zhenting. He was actually able to make His Majesty confer his idiot daughter and even made Yarrow Su Luan Imperial Gui Fei. It seems that in His Majesty's heart, his position is still very important. Zi Shuang handed all the fish food in her hands to Huan Kia as she analyzed the situation. That might not be the case, His Majesty hasn't conferred an empress yet. However, whenever I think of Yarrow Mo Shin's difficult labor and how both mother and son died, Ben Gong feels indescribably carefree. It's good that they died. Especially that little vile spawn. If he was allowed to live, the position of crown prince would fall into their Yarrow family. At that time, it wouldn't be good. Eat, fill yourselves to death. Huan Qi's cherry lips curled into a sinister smile as she threw all the fish food in her hands into the jade lake. You're not allowed to say bad things about second older sister. Just as Huan Qi was about to leave the pavilion, Yarrow Mo Wn suddenly rushed over and looked angrily at Huan Qi. If she remembered correctly, when Huan Qi beat a palace maid to death, she was the one who didn't make a big deal out of it. In this moment, Yarrow Mo Wn sorrowfully admitted that in this world, good people didn't have good rewards. Who are you? Huan Qi sized up the unfamiliar woman in front of her and questioned coldly. She's the new master of Guan Osprey Palace. His Majesty personally bestowed her the title of Consort Yarrow. According to the rules of the palace, my master has been bestowed a courtesy name, but you don't, so you should greet my master. Ting Yu, who had been suppressing her anger for a long time, immediately rushed over and shouted. The entire pavilion suddenly fell silent. Huan Qi stared blankly for a moment, then suddenly let out a loud laugh. She laughed so hard that tears streamed down her face. Phut, ha ha ha. Zi Shuang, did you hear that? She actually wants me to bow to an idiot. I can't take it anymore. Hurry up and support this consort. My stomach is hurting from all this laughing. Huan Qi laughed wildly without restraint, her eyes filled with disdain. What are you looking at? Get lost. Don't block my master's way. Zi Shuang pushed Ting Yu away in disgust. Just as she was about to help Huan Qi leave the pavilion, Yarrow Moen suddenly rushed over and pulled Zi Shuang away. She fiercely pushed Huan Qi against the railing of the pavilion with reddened eyes. Go apologize to second older sister. Yarrow Moen's voice was perfect, every word incomparably clear. You're brazen. You actually dare to be rude to Consort Chen. Zi Shuang, who had finally managed to steady herself, was just about to pull Yarrow Moen away when Ting Yu grabbed her hair, causing her to cry out in pain. Chapter 32. You're going. Or not. Yarrow Mo Wan's hands pressed down hard on Huan Qi's jade shoulders. Her clear eyes were bloodshot. She couldn't bear to hear any insults towards Zhong'er. This was the root of Huan Qi's mistake. This consort isn't going. In the next second, Huan Qi had already been pushed off the pavilion by Yarrow Moen. With a plop, she fell into the jade lake. The water droplets splashed high up into the air, looking even more sparkling and translucent under the sunlight. Chen. Consort Chen. Someone come. Consort has fallen into the water. Someone come quickly. You. Zi Shuang pushed Ting Yu away fiercely and rushed to the railing. Unfortunately, she didn't know how to swim, so she could only watch her mistress flop around in the water. Even though it was a warm spring day, the lake water was exceptionally cold. I already gave her a chance to choose. She's the one who didn't want to go. Yarrow Mo Wn shrugged innocently and threw Zi Shuang down. She indicated for the flabbergasted Ting Yu to follow her. You idiot. My master won't let you get away with this. Just as Zi Shuang came back to her senses and shouted, Ting Yu pushed Zi Shuang down with lightning speed. It was clear that Zi Shuang was much heavier than Huan Qi. The water droplets splashed up and soaked Yarrow Mo Wan's clothes. Ting Yu, what are you doing? Yarrow Mo Wn suddenly turned around and looked at Ting Yu, who was clapping her hands and walking towards her in surprise. She actually dared to insult you. Of course Ting Yu has to teach her a lesson. Ting Yu put on a loyal expression. This consort knows that Huan Qi knows how to swim, so there's nothing to worry about. Are you sure Zi Shuang won't drown? Yarrow Mo Wan pretended to look towards Ting Yu solemnly. When Ting Yu heard this, her face instantly turned as white as paper. She was about to run back to the pavilion when Yarrow Mo Wan pulled her back. Let's return to the palace. Yarrow Mo Wan said indifferently. But the patrolling guards have already rushed over. They won't die. Yaromo Wn lifted her cherry lips and the smile in her eyes deepened. Seeing her mistress walk out of the pavilion unhurriedly, Tingyu subconsciously turned to look and hurriedly followed. When they returned to Guan Osprey Palace, Yaromoan leisurely leaned back on the chaise lounge. Fluffy, who was in her embrace, seemed even more languid than her as she stretched lazily on Yaromoan's lap. Liu Xing still hasn't returned. Yaromo Wn focused on caressing the kitten in her arms as she asked indifferently. After waiting for a long time without anyone replying, she finally looked up and saw that Tingyu was pacing around the entrance of Guan Osprey Palace while waving the embroidered handkerchief. Tingyu. Yaromoan slightly raised her voice. When Tingyu heard this, she immediately walked back to Yaromoan's side with an expression of deep hatred. Your Highness, why do you think Consort Chen and the others aren't here yet? It's almost 5 o'clock and there's no one around. Tingyu questioned anxiously. What did they come here for? Yaromoan asked disapprovingly. Of course I'm here to denounce you. Tingyu replied as a matter of course. Even if they send a punitive force to denounce us, they won't come to Guan Osprey Palace. Don't worry. Yaromoan's cherry lips pursed into a smile as her jade fingers stroked Fluffy's snow-colored fur. Won't come to Guan Osprey Palace? Then where would they go? This servant doesn't understand. Tingyu looked towards her mistress in confusion as her brows furrowed. Pure Flowers Palace. Although Huan Qia's temperament is a bit violent and she's not as shrewd as the other consorts, she's not stupid. If she directly came to Guan Osprey Palace, how could she guarantee that Ben Gong wouldn't push her into the water basin again and choke on water? Furthermore, it wouldn't be good for her to bicker with a fool. If she wants to seek justice, she'll naturally find someone who's reasonable. Yaromoan's beautiful eyes were as sharp as a blade. It was as if every step they took was within her calculations. Chapter 33. Liu Xing kowtows in salute to Niang Niang. After staying in the palace for a few days, Liu Xing had also learned the rules of the palace. Rise, how did the investigation go? When Yaromoan looked at Liu Xing, her eyes would always overflow with slight heartache. This man was too persistent. Even if he knew there wouldn't be any results, he still gave his all without hesitation. With Liu Xing's wholehearted love, Mei Mei's first half of life was blissful. Replying Niang Niang, this servant heard from Steward Yarrow that Third Madam and Little Young Master have already moved into Prime Minister Yarrow Fu, but their days aren't good. Eldest Madam frequently whipped Third Madam and didn't treat Little Young Master well. However, because of Master, she didn't do anything in secret. However, this is something that will happen sooner or later. Liu Xing reported everything he heard from Yarrow Tu to Yaromoan. Father doesn't care. Yaromoan frowned slightly. She not only sympathized with Su Muzi, but also felt a trace of guilt. If she hadn't needed it, the two of them wouldn't have been exposed so quickly and they would have suffered less. Su Muzi was in the same situation as her mother. She was threatened by her father and bullied by the legal wife. No matter what, she couldn't just sit back and do nothing. Perhaps Master is hindered by the Imperial Gui Fei, so as long as Eldest Madam doesn't harm Little Young Master, he'll turn a blind eye to Su Muzi, said Liu Xing with a sigh. Master is just like that. Back then, he clearly knew that Eldest Madam had ordered Jiao Momo to poison Madam, but he didn't care at all. Liu Xing's words instantly enraged Tingyu. These were all things Jiao Momo had personally said when they were being tortured in the woodshed. Tingyu. At the side, Liu Xing instinctively stopped Tingyu, afraid that Yaromoan would be hurt if she heard this. It's fine. Prepare dinner, Ben Gong is a bit hungry. Yaromoan caressed Fluffy with a faint smile. However, her frozen heart became even colder. This servant will go now. Liu Xing respectfully left Guan Osprey Palace and headed towards the imperial kitchen. Right after Liu Xing left, Yi Junqing suddenly appeared at the entrance of Guan Osprey Palace. When the setting sun shone on his face, it was as if it was plated with a golden sheen, causing his already handsome face to look even more stunning. Sometimes, Yaromoan wondered why someone who fought on the battlefield all year round had skin so white. It was so white that even she was a bit jealous. This servant kowtows in salute to the esteemed prince. Esteemed prince, please come inside. In the end, Ting Yu was still a young woman. At this moment, she was already unable to resist the temptation. She moved to the entrance of the palace and without even asking if her master was willing, she eagerly invited Yi Junqing in. Of course, she couldn't blame Ting Yu. Even a woman who was used to seeing the world of romance was unable to resist Yi Junqing's charm, let alone Ting Yu. However, Yarrow Moen noticed that Yi Junqing's expression wasn't as friendly as Ting Yu's. As expected, when Yi Junqing stepped into the main hall, he sternly ordered Ting Yu to leave. Withdraw first. This prince has something to say to your master. Yi Junqing's words startled Ting Yu and she looked towards Yarrow Moen in confusion. Stand guard outside. Without my order, don't let anyone in. Oh right, bring Fluffy out. As Yarrow Moen spoke, she placed the kitten into Ting Yu's arms. She didn't want the city gates to catch fire and the fish in the moat would be affected. From Yi Junqing's posture, it seemed that he was truly angry. Yarrow Moen only got up lazily when the palace doors were tightly shut. She swayed gracefully to the table and picked up the cracked blue-glazed teapot. She poured 2 cups, one was used and the other was pushed towards Yi Junqing. Chapter 34. Joy Spring Brothels Jing Xin, you wouldn't deny this identity, right? Yi Junqing's eyes flashed with anger. Oh, if Prince hadn't reminded me, Moen really would have forgotten. Yarrow Moen didn't deny it because there was no point. I once heard Morshine mention that her younger sister only had the intelligence of a child. You clearly aren't. You couldn't possibly be a substitute that Yi Hongyi got from somewhere to secretly do some shady business, right? Yi Junqing made a logical guess. If it wasn't related to Morshine, he wouldn't care about this woman's true identity. Perhaps eldest sister lied to you? Yarrow Moen hid the sharpness in her eyes and looked towards Yi Junqing innocently. Morshine wouldn't lie to me. She can choose not to say, but she definitely wouldn't lie to me. Yi Junqing's clear eyes flickered with unswerving determination as he spoke confidently. It was as if he was stating an unquestionable truth. Ha! Yarrow Morshine, that big idiot. Tears swayed in her eyes but Yarrow Moen forced them back. She really didn't know what she had done to Yi Junqing for him to trust her so unwaveringly. You're not allowed to say bad things about Morshine, otherwise, I won't be polite to you. I don't care who you are. Yi Junqing's eyes suddenly turned cold and a deep darkness appeared in them. Right at this time, Ting Yu's voice came from outside the door. This servant kowtows in salute to your majesty, Imperial Noble Consort, Imperial Consort Chen. Ting Yu's voice was very loud, clearly warning the people in the room. Yarrow Moen couldn't help but shake her head. Yarrow Sulwan wasn't that smart. In the end, she still did as she expected and brought the matter of Jade Lake to His Majesty. Suddenly, Yarrow Moen's lips curved into a cold smile. Although it only appeared for a moment, Yi Junqing couldn't help but frown when he saw it. Prince wouldn't be impolite to Moen in front of His Majesty, right? You know how much His Majesty loves Moen. Yarrow Moen smiled as she walked around Yi Junqing in a provocative manner towards the palace doors. Your Majesty, Wan doesn't want to eat with the esteemed prince. I don't want him to enter Wan's room again. The moment the palace doors opened, Yarrow Moen's tears fell so quickly that Yi Junqing was flabbergasted. When Yi Hongyi saw Yarrow Moen's wronged expression, he immediately pulled her into his embrace, as if he'd forgotten his original intentions. He couldn't bear to see such a porcelain doll cry. What happened? Tell me, I will help you decide. Yi Hongyi's gaze swept past the furious Yi Junqing before landing on Yarrow Moen. It was as gentle as the spring breeze in April. The esteemed prince insists on killing Wan's Fluffy. If Wanna was unwilling, he would make his move. Your Majesty, chase him out. Yarrow Moen spoke in a childish voice as she abruptly pointed at Yi Junqing. Her angry little face was like a pear blossom in the rain, making her look extremely lovable. The corners of Yi Junqing's lips twitched and 3 black lines instantly appeared on his forehead as he stood alone in the wind. This woman. He actually acted so well. Damn it. He really wanted to expose Yarrow Moan's facade, but he restrained himself. Junqing, this is where you're wrong. In any case, you're a prince, so why bother with a beast? We will protect Fluffy's life. If you have any dissatisfaction, then come at us. Don't make things difficult for Consort Yarrow. Yi Hongyi looked towards Yi Junqing angrily as his voice gradually turned cold. This subject younger brother wouldn't dare. Yi Junqing didn't want to explain any further, nor did he know how to explain. At this moment, Yarrow Sulwan, who was standing behind Yi Hongyi, felt an indescribable rage burning in her heart. That damned cat, it actually managed to obtain His Majesty's protection. It seemed that she had prepared the poison for nothing. She would let that beast off for now. There would be plenty of time in the future, so she wasn't afraid that she wouldn't have a chance to kill it. Chapter 35. You can't lie. Consort Chen is right here. You wouldn't deny it, right? Yarrow Sulwan hated Yarrow Moan's pitiful appearance the most. It was as if the entire world was bullying her. Your Majesty, you have to uphold justice for this concubine. This concubine was feeding the fish in the pavilion when this concubine Yarrow appeared out of nowhere and pushed this concubine into the water without any reason. If it wasn't for the guards saving me in time, this concubine is afraid that I won't be able to see your Majesty again. Huan Kia wept as she walked to Yi Hongyi's side. She raised her sleeve to wipe away her tears and cried miserably. Tell me, why did you push Consort Chen down from the pavilion? Yi Hongyi barely glanced at Huan Kia as he gently lifted her chin with his finger. She can say that is an idiot. It's okay, everyone says that. Is already used to it. But, she can't say bad things about second sister. Only has second sister now. If anyone dares to bully second sister, won't agree. Second sister. Can you not be angry? Don't dislike okay? Yarrow Moan's voice carried a heavy sobbing tone. She raised her hand without warning towards Yarrow Sulwan. When Yarrow Sulwan wasn't paying attention, she forcefully grabbed that pair of hands that were still wrapped in white gauze. Ouch! Get lost! Yarrow Sulwan screamed in pain and flung Yarrow Moan's hand away in disgust. However, in the next second, she realized that she had lost control of herself. When she raised her eyes, she saw Yi Hongyi's cold gaze. Second older sister doesn't dislike you. Yarrow Sulwan lied and explained. Your Majesty, this concubine didn't say anything bad about Imperial Gui Fei, I really didn't. Consort Chen frantically refuted. In her memory, she had only cursed Yarrow Morshin a few times. At the side, Yi Junqing saw all of this and couldn't help but admire Yarrow Moan's ability to shift the blame onto Huan Kia and Yarrow Sulwan with just a few words. It was as if she hadn't done anything wrong. More importantly, Yarrow Sulwan and Huan Kia had also been circled inside by her. They no longer had the aggressive attitude they had when they first came. Forget it, you guys can leave. I want to eat with Yi Hongyi waved his hand angrily, then pulled Yarrow Moan into his embrace and gently wiped away the tears on her face. Cried so much that even our hearts ache. If anyone dares to make cry again, we will behead him. Yi Hongyi's tone was soft and gentle as if he was talking about some peerless treasure. The light in his eyes was as gentle as water. Hearing this, Yarrow Sulwan, who was about to open her mouth again, immediately swallowed her words even though she was unwilling. On the other hand, Huan Kia, who was at the side, didn't seem to realize the severity of the problem. She just happened to rush over and look at Yi Hongyi with teary eyes. Your Majesty, this concubine. I told you to get out, didn't you hear me? His icy voice was filled with a sinister chill. Yi Hongyi's eyes shone with an extremely dark light. Huan Kia was instantly stunned. At that time, no matter how angry His Majesty had been, he had never revealed this kind of gaze. It was like a bloodthirsty lion opening its bloody mouth to devour someone. Chapter 36. What a good show you sisters are putting on. What does Consort Chen mean by this? Could it be that you suspect Ben Gong of colluding with consort Yao? Yao Sulwan suddenly felt like she had to eat bitter medicine in silence. She clearly wanted Yao Moen to die even more than Huan Kia, but unfortunately, no one believed her. It's not a suspicion, it's a certainty. Yao Sulwan, you're truly capable. If you have the ability, then come directly at Ben Gong. Don't use a fool as a knife. Because her father Huan Heng held military power, Huan Kia hadn't restrained her temper in the palace and had always been domineering. Now that she had suffered this kind of grievance, she naturally wouldn't let it go. Consort Chen, don't forget that Ben Gong is the imperial Gui Fei. Pay attention to your attitude. Yao Sulwan normally didn't provoke this thorn, but if she really did, she wouldn't back down. After all, her father was a prime minister and her own rank was above Huan Kia's. Ben Gong's attitude can be considered good. Yao Sulwan, this matter isn't over. Since His Majesty can't get justice, Ben Gong has a way to get it back myself. Zi Shuang, let's go. Huan Kia didn't allow Yao Sulwan to refute and immediately left with a flick of her sleeve. Your Highness, Consort Chen is too tyrannical. Are you just going to let her have it? Said Cai Ying disapprovingly as she watched Huan Kia leave angrily. What else can I do? His Majesty is still inside. Could it be that he's going to go crazy with her? She's just a jumping clown, there's nothing she can do. On the other hand, His Majesty, how could he let Yao Moen off like this? I really don't understand what His Majesty is thinking. She's clearly an idiot, but he treats her like a treasure. Yao Sulwan's icy gaze swept over the white muslin in her hands as hatred surged in her chest. Inside the main hall, Yi Hongyi supported Yao Moen to the table dotingly and turned to look towards Yi Junqing. Junqing, sit too. The moment Yi Hongyi spoke, he saw An Bingshan jog in from outside and mumble something into Yi Hongyi's ear. An Bingshan's voice was very soft. Yao Moen tried very hard to listen, but she couldn't hear a single word. Zhen still has matters to attend to, so Zhen won't be able to keep you company tonight. Don't worry, Zhen will protect Fluffy's life, so no one will dare to do anything to her. A great person like you shouldn't stoop to petty people like him and forgive the esteemed prince this time. If you don't let him eat here, he'll probably go hungry. Yi Hongyi pressed his face against Yao Moen's cheek as he spoke in a low voice as if he was coaxing a child. Then, all right, Wana will listen to your majesty. Yao Moen hesitated for a long time before reluctantly nodding. Good girl, Wana. Then Zhen will leave. Eat more, Zhen will come see you tomorrow. Yi Hongyi reluctantly left Yao Moen and turned to leave Guan Osprey Palace. Once Yi Hongyi left, Yi Junqing sat down at the table and snorted disdainfully at Yao Moen. What a good acting. Your Highness is overpraising me. Yao Moen spoke calmly. Her jade fingers picked up a pair of carved bamboo chopsticks and elegantly picked up a piece of fish to carefully taste. Perhaps it was because of her mood, but Yao Moen felt that tonight's meal was especially to her taste. She believed that after her ruckus, not only had she instigated disharmony between Huan Kia and Yao Sulwan, she had also caused Left General Huan Heng and her father to become enemies. The good show was finally starting. She was really looking forward to it. Ben Wang wasn't praising you. It can't be that you didn't hear it. Yi Junqing immediately clarified. Isn't that so? Then what do you mean? Yao Moen's delicate face suddenly turned towards Yi Junqing as she asked this question sincerely. Chapter 37. Just after noon the next day, Yao Mo Wen had nothing to do and was preparing to go out for a walk when she saw Liu Xing hastily rush in from outside. Your ladyship, First Madam has entered the palace with young master. Liu Xing had placed spies in Yao Xiongfu, so the moment Dou Xianglan stepped out of the door, Liu Xing received the news. Dou Xianglan is just this short-sighted. She wants to borrow Yao Sulwan's hand to kill Yao Yu, but she doesn't know that the previous court and the inner palace have a rather subtle relationship. If she forces him into a corner, father will abandon Yao Sulwan, this chess piece. At that time, the ones who will suffer a loss will be the mother and son. Yao Mo Wen laughed coldly as she stood up. Her plump fingers caressed the intricately embroidered orchid on her sleeves as a shrewd light flashed through her eyes. Will the imperial noble consort really harm Yarrow Yu? That's old master's only son. Liu Xing looked towards Yarrow Mo Wan worriedly, his anxiety obvious. Yarrow Sulwan isn't stupid. She naturally wouldn't take the risk. However, Liu Xing, Ting Yu, the two of you follow Ben Gong to Pure Flowers Palace. It's only right that Ben Gong pay a visit to this Di mother. Yarrow Moan walked out of Guan Osprey Palace with light and graceful steps. The sunlight shone on her pitilessly beautiful face, but it was unable to penetrate her frozen skin. Inside Pure Flowers Palace, Yarrow Sulwan glared fiercely at the timid Yarrow Yu standing at the side and turned to order Cai Ying. Cai Ying, take Yarrow Yu to the Imperial Garden to play. After sending Yarrow Yu away, Yarrow Sulwan looked towards her mother. Mother, why did you bring him to the palace? Yarrow Sulwan looked towards Do Xianglan in confusion and asked suspiciously. In the Fu, your father ordered Yarrow Tu and the others to keep a close watch, so I couldn't do anything. We might as well bring him to the Imperial Palace, push him into a lake, and say that he accidentally fell into it and drowned. No matter how angry your father is, he won't make a scene in the Imperial Palace, right? Do Xianglan sipped her tea as if this was a very simple matter. My dearest mother, can you stop causing trouble? I'm already so annoyed over here that I can't believe you could come up with this kind of idea. Yarrow Sulwan rolled her eyes at Do Xianglan speechlessly and sighed fiercely. How can you say that I'm causing trouble? Mother is doing this for your own good. Look at your father, he only talks about that bastard all day long. He doesn't take you seriously anymore. After court this morning, he even criticized you in front of me, saying that he shouldn't have offended Consort Chen, causing Huan Heng to accuse him in front of the palace. It was him who had a handle on Huan Heng. What does it have to do with you? Do Xianglan snorted coldly and said hatefully. Huan Heng told his father about it. I didn't expect that Consort Chen's speed to be so fast. Yarrow Sulwan's long, shapely eyebrows tightly knit together, her gaze gradually turning cold. What happened? Haven't you and Consort Chen always minded your own business? It couldn't be that she saw that you were conferred the title of Imperial Gui Fei, so she's deliberately finding fault with you, right? Do Xianglan saw Yarrow Sulwan's angry face and asked worriedly. Isn't it all thanks to that idiot? I don't know what Yarrow Mo Wan was thinking, but she actually pushed Huan Kia from the pavilion into the lake and almost drowned her. If it was me, I also wouldn't let this matter rest. Just thinking about it made Yarrow Sulwan's belly full of anger. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.